of the Community Redevelopment and Housing Commission. Today is May 22nd, 2019. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance that will be led by Commissioner Perez.
Put your right hand over the left. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Madam Recording Secretary, may you please take roll call?
Commissioner Aguinaga. Present. Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Perez.
Present.
Chair Ramos.
Present.
Vice Chair Santana.
Present.
Commissioner Ursua.
Present.
Commissioner Tardif.
Present.
Commissioner Limon.
Present.
Commissioner Frazier.
Present.
Commissioner Vasquez. Present. Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. Seeing a quorum, this meeting is officially called to order. This is time for the Commission to consider matters under consent calendar. Items include items 1 through 2. Do any members have any corrections to the minutes, items they wish to pull for separate discussion or abstain on? Do I have a motion to consider items 1 through 2?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you for your motion, Commissioner Aguinaga. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Perez. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The matter is approved by unanimous consent.
Abstention. I wasn't present.
Thank you, Commissioner. So you will be abstaining? You will be abstaining, Commissioner
Yes, sir.
Suh? Thank you. The matter is approved with a vote of 8 in favor, 7 in favor, 0 in opposition, and 1 abstention. We will now consider matters under the business calendar. The first item on the business calendar is item number 3. We approve a pre-loan commitment of $3,971 and 400. I'm sorry. The first item on the business calendar is item number 3. Approve a pre-loan commitment of $3 million of 900. Okay, that's just. Read it.
$3,971,440 of affordable housing funds and a ground lease to related companies of the California and Washington Project, Strategic Plan 5-3C.
Thank you. Will staff report on the matter?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. This item, I'd like to start from the beginning to walk you through this item a little bit. This item wraps up an RFP process that we started back in June 18th, 2018, in which we were authorized by City Council to issue an RFP for affordable housing funds and land assets for fiscal year 18-19, which we're currently in. Following a very long deliberative review process internally, as well as with our partners at the County of Orange, we're now bringing forward a proposal to you for the award of $3.9 million in affordable housing funds and a housing authority owned land asset at 1126 and 1146 East Washington Avenue. If we can start from the beginning of the staff report, the funds that we're recommending for approval is equal to $3,007,489 in our Home Investment Partnerships Program funds and $963,951 in our Neighborhood Stabilization Program funds. The recommendation also includes a ground lease of our Housing Authority owned parcel at 1126 East Washington Avenue. Then there are 2 recommendations pertaining to a tenants in common agreement and a joint powers agreement with the County of Orange. The first part of the staff report talks in detail about the RFP process. You have seen this text before for 3 other affordable housing awards that you approved for our Legacy Square project being developed by National Corps in partnership with Mercy House Living Centers, our Francis Xavier project being developed by Homemade Orange County in partnership with Mercy House, and our Habitat for Humanity project well as our fourth project, the budget-in project being developed by Jamboree Housing. So this is the fifth and final project being recommended for approval under that RFP. The if you look at page 3-5 of the staff report, we talk about at length about how we finalized our internal review panel and review process of the proposals we received under that RFP, and then recommended 3 proposals over to our counterparts at the county. Now, conceptually, you'd ask, why would you do that? So this parcel that we're recommending for an award and for the development of an 86-unit affordable housing project on our parcel is adjacent to a parcel that's owned by the County of Orange. Our partners at Related Companies of California will explain that in significant detail for you, but that's why we had to coordinate with our partners at the County of Orange on the deliberative review process for this award, such that we can develop the entire site instead of just our single parcel. The county reviewed the recommendations by the city and then conducted interviews of the 3 final developers who submitted a proposal and then provided us with their final recommendation. We reviewed those proposals one more time through a due diligence process and then made our final recommendation, which is presented to you here today. The entire value of our financial award for this project is $7,051,440. How we arrive at that is you take the $3.9 million in our affordable housing funds, as well as the appraised value of the land that we're committing under a long-term ground lease, which was appraised at $3,080,000. And then that gets you to the $7,051,000 that you see at the bottom of 3-5. The developer and the development team is here today to present their project to you for your consideration, as well as our partners at the County of Orange from the CEO's office is here to answer any questions on behalf of the county regarding their process. And I'd like to now invite the developer and their team to present their project to you.
Good afternoon, Housing Commissioners. I'll start with my name. My name is Leanne Takano. I am the Director of Southern California Operations for Related California Affordable. On behalf of Related, ACOF, and our architect, WHA, we are excited to be here to present not only the team, but this project for your consideration. So we have representatives from, and you will hear from all of them, from ACOF, our nonprofit partner and social service partner, and WHA, who is our design architect, who was instrumental in the renderings and all the design you see today. So this is just an overview of what we're going to be talking about during our presentation. So Related Companies of California, we have a number of pillars that we kind of strive for, and you can see them on the PowerPoint presentation in front of you. I just want to go into a couple of them for you. I think some of the other ones are pretty self-explanatory. Investment in the long term. We, Related as a company, do operate on a build and hold model. So we are a partner for the long term. And so since our inception about 30 years ago, we have a number of portfolio projects that have continued to be in under the supervision and guidance of Related. In terms of, let's see, industry leadership. So Related Companies as a whole has been a lot in the news more so for our mega projects. But really, we started as an affordable housing developer, and we also do luxury market rate. So I'm sure people have heard about Hudson Yards and the Grand, some of our really large mega projects. But at the same time, we are an industry leader in affordable housing as well. So that is something you get with Related as a development partner. We have experience with not only affordable housing, but luxury market rate. And we try to do a nice job of cross-pollination. So a lot of things in terms of what you see in our luxury market projects, we try to bring in some sort of aspect or form into our affordable housing models as well. Integration. So, of course, we're on a build and hold model. So part of it is to also make sure we seamlessly integrate within the larger community. So that's one of the most important pillars for affordable housing is you don't want it to look like affordable housing. And because we are in for the long term, that's something we really do strive for. So I briefly touched upon some of the background already. We were founded in 1989. This is our 30th anniversary. We started in affordable housing, but we do also do luxury market rate. We have 91 tax credit completed projects during our history, of which 65 are new construction projects. So really, we are more of an expert when it comes to new construction. We also do a lot of resyndications too on our existing portfolio. What that means is that we do an investment of new tax credits and bond proceeds into our existing portfolio. So after 15 years, we do a kind of a refresh of our projects. Of the 91 tax credit finance developments, we have completed 11,000 units. Currently, we have 20 projects that are ongoing, which totals over 2,000 units. We've won a number of project awards. That's something we also strive for as a developer. It's not just enough just to build it, but we want it to achieve a number of goals. And that's really what we work for and work towards with our city partners to see what are your goals? How can we achieve them for you? And every development is different. In the end, it's been great to be recognized as an award-winning developer, but really it comes down to the partnership between our local jurisdictions as well as Related and making sure that we can make your dreams of what you want to see a reality. In fact, so we actually have past experience in the city of Santa Ana. Our Triada project is actually, it was completed back in 2013. It was 2 phases. The first phase was new construction, and it has a podium parking garage and units above it. And you can notice that on this project as well, there was a Mission Revival architectural style. So, and with the same architect that was on that project is also on this one. Part of the phase 2 component, we had an historical rehab, which was actually a lot of fun for us. We don't see a lot of this, so this was a challenge that we had to figure out as part of the development of phase 2. This is just a brief overview of Triada, 114 units total between the 2 phases. We've won a number of awards, including awards from the Kennedy Commission, as well as the Gold Nugget. Collectively, you can see that we had 30 units that were at 50% AMI, or 30 to 50% AMI, I'm sorry, and 114 units total, of which you notice we actually had quite a bit of common area space. Definitely more than what's required by TCAC, but that's really one of those visions that I know when we worked with the city of Santa Ana and a lot of our other local jurisdictions that really strive to provide more than what's minimally required. At this time, I would go ahead and like to pass it to ACOF, our nonprofit partner.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Miha Rizdan. I'm the Director of Housing for A Community of Friends. And
Hi, I'm James Ramirez. I'm the Director of Services for Community of Friends.
I'm going to start by telling you a little bit more about A Community of Friends, our background, about our organization, and then James will talk much more in depth about the services we provide to tenants in our buildings. So, a community of friends was started actually by the Department of Mental Health, specifically for the purpose of ending homelessness for those who are suffering from mental illness. And that was our founding mission and has remained so over the past 31 years. We started as a developer, but over time we have taken on delivering case management and services directly, managing our own properties, asset management, and integrating all of these services in our properties. So as I mentioned, we were founded 31 years ago in 1988. All but 2, because of our founding mission, of our 49 properties are supportive housing developments. We have 5 we develop all over Southern California, including in Orange County, and 5 of our developments are in Orange County. We just finished one in Fullerton, and there is one, Vista del Rio in Santa Ana. Although we have built 49 properties, we actually have only 43 in our current portfolio, and that is because one of the things that a Community of Friends does is partner with other service organizations that are interested in housing their particular service population, and many times they don't have the development capacity, so we have partnered with service agencies to develop housing for their particular clients. They've often been organizations that serve transitional aged youth or young families, but over time, we have transferred the property over to that partner. But generally, we, like Related, are long-term owners of our properties, and when we develop them, when we structure them, we think of them from kind of this long view, knowing that it's going to be part of our portfolio for the long haul. Because our mission is to end homelessness for those who are experiencing mental illness, it's really important to us, and it's a focus of ours, that our tenants stay stably housed. The only way to end homelessness is for people to stay stably housed. And so we did provide some of our housing retention rates for the first year. We also track over 3 years because we want to know that people are staying housed for a long time. These retention rates are really important, partially because if you look, 81% of the units across our entire portfolio of over 2,000 units serve homeless households, and a large percentage of that are people who were chronically homeless before coming in. So that's a testament to our services department and how hard they work and the services they provide in our developments. So these are some photos of Vista del Rio. This is the property we developed in Santa Ana. And as you can see, it's a 41-unit development targeting households earning 30 to 50% of the area median income. And with that, I'll turn it over to James to talk about our approach and services.
Hello, everyone. So a little bit about Community of Friends, our services department. So we've been practicing housing first since the initial, since 1988. Our mission is to house people that have been formerly homeless with a mental illness and do whatever it takes to keep them housed. Like Mihei was saying, our housing retention rate is around 81%, which is pretty strong in this community that we're serving. We have wraparound services. We do everything from individualized case management, intensive case management, individualized service plans, where it works on helping people with major substance abuse issues, mental health, chronic health conditions, employment, job readiness. We do life skills on site. So we start with basic groups, because remember, a lot of our tenants have been chronically homeless for years and years. So groups such as cleaning the stove, how to wash your laundry, how to take out the trash regularly, what to do to get ready for a housing inspection. I mean, this is constant groups that we're constantly doing on site, doing one-on-one individual counseling. We do one-on-one crisis intervention groups. We work with local LA County Department of Mental Health. We work with the Orange County Health Agency out here for our Orange County buildings. So everything is very services tenant oriented with individualized case management based on their individual needs, whatever that may be, and whatever challenges that they're going through. Every 6 months, we look at their individualized goals, and we make adjustments based on what the tenant actually states that they want to work on next for the next 6 months. Yeah, so again, all our service coordinations, we have a strong relationship with the property management team in order to make this all work. So we hold, as our case managers on site, we have bi-weekly meetings with the property managers, and we talk about if there's any problems and issues. Maybe the tenant gets behind on rent. We work on a plan to get them caught up again. Maybe there's a noise issue. We work with the property management team, and we talk to the tenant, the actual tenant, through the case manager, to come to an agreement that, you know, in order to keep their housing tenancy, that we work on those issues, and so forth. So the services team works 24/7 in terms of working with the tenant in terms of solving any issues. All our buildings, we have a night after hours number, so if anything does happen, say 2, 3 in the morning, it goes up to the on-site supervisor, and the supervisor sends the team out, and we go out and attend whatever need that's being actually going on at the building. So again, it's like whatever it takes in order to keep someone housed, and that's what ACOF has done successfully since the beginning in 1988. So again, the case management goes on with families. We have child care assistance. We do domestic violence groups. We bring NAAA support groups on site. We have peer advocacy. Peer advocacy, we have grants that work with peer advocates for tenants that have been stably housed for some time. They'll come out and share the life experiences with new tenants that have been barely moved into supportive housing. And they meet with their peers, and they learn from their peers how they became successful. And that kind of grows into something that flourishes. A lot of times, peers trust peers. Peers that have been through it with real life experiences, they can relate to that. At all our buildings, about 70% of our buildings and all our newer developments, we have gardening groups. We have gardens on site, so the case managers work at life skill groups to plant vegetables and fruits and vegetables, and then we pick that and we bring it to our life skill groups, and we do cooking classes, and we show tenants how to shop on a dime, and we give them the recipes so they could replicate that in their own apartments. So we're changing everything that they learn out in the streets from survival skills, living on maybe GR or Social Security, and maybe eating at McDonald's and Jack in the Box to survive. But once they move into permanent supportive housing, we're trying to change those two positive habits, trying to help people become a little bit more healthier, energized. And we call it, and we have an energize and exercise curriculum where they just start working out, they start eating right. We take them on tours to the local grocery stores, teach them how to read labels and so forth. So there's a lot of things that goes into supportive services. And that's why ACOF is really successful at helping this population stay housed.
One other thing I wanted to highlight is that we have often found that very low-income households, even though they did not come in off the streets or were homeless coming in, they are also very vulnerable. And I think this is particularly important in this project because the affordable units are targeting very low income at 30% AMI. And so it is ACOF's service delivery model has been to make all of our services available to all the tenants in our development, regardless of whether they're a supportive housing tenant or it's a general affordable unit, because we see that all the tenants make use of all the services we offer, which is why you see kind of this arrow going back and forth. And it's just maybe the level of intensity at which they utilize the services. It might be a little bit different, but it is a value that we bring to all the tenants in our buildings. With that, I'll turn it back over to Relita.
Thank you.
Hi, Housing Commissioners. My name is Randy, and I'm with Related Companies of California. I'm the project manager on this project. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So this slide really shows you the phases of development for a typical project. As a developer and owner of the project, we are a soups to nuts developer. So you can see that from inception in terms of entitlements, all the way to financing applications, and through construction, management, and compliance, we're going to be there every step of the way. So this diagram is to show you that we're going to be here for the long run. So during the RFP stage and still ongoing, we wanted to address certain goals that the city and the county wanted to address. So based on the affordable housing policies that the city has published in the city of Santa Ana, part of that was to increase supply for extremely low-income households, supply of housing, and also to increase the supply of large family housing. And some of the goals for the county was to increase the supply for smaller units and also provide units for permanent supportive housing. So first, the first item for the extremely low income units, how we're addressing that and how we're increasing that is we have all of our units, they're fixed at 30% AMI. It's deeply affordable, and that's 85 units of the 86. How we're addressing the city's large family housing concern is that we have 22 three-bedroom and four-bedroom units on the site. And for the county's goal of having smaller units, we actually have 42 studios and one-bedroom units. And finally, for the permanent supportive housing goal that the county set, we have 50% of our units that are designated as permanent supportive units. And this next slide shows you the brief description, a table of our development plan of the project. It's 86 units. One of the units is a manager's unit, so 85 units are going to be 100% at 30% AMI. We have 16 studios, 26 one-bedroom units, 22 two-bedroom units, 17 three-bedroom units, and 5 four-bedroom units. And on the third column, we show you, as you can see, these are the permanent supportive housing units, and there are 16 16 studios, 26 one-bedroom units, and then 1 two-bedroom unit. Also included is we're incorporating approximately about 3,500 square feet of community space in the project.
If I could just add on that, that last chart, which is a really important component of the project, what's the affordability levels, right? Related initially proposed to the city a different unit mix with some higher affordability levels on some of the units, and staff, I'd say quite proactively, in order to fulfill the city's goals, requested Related to lower their affordability levels down to the lowest possible at 30% AMI for all of the units. It was quite a proactive thing to do, in some ways an aggressive thing to do, but we made the request knowing that the state of California has new sources of funds coming down through Prop 1 and Prop 2 that were approved in the last election, and that those new sources should be able to fill the financial gap that the request would cause for the project. And after reviewing their financial capacity to develop this project, Related returned back to us and accepted the request. So that was that was a component, that important piece of that you're seeing in that unit mix that happened behind the scenes.
I just want to thank you for highlighting that, Judson. I had put that down in my notes because I saw what they originally proposed. And I think related for being open to that. I know developers will sometimes starting to walk away, but I'm happy that you did not. And I think I'm very happy that you took that approach, and I think that needs to become a standard practice, knowing what the need is here in Santana. So thank you.
Thanks, Justin. So moving on to the next slide, this shows you the different challenges in doing research for the site. So first off, I want to highlight on the right side of this slide, you'll see the site plan that's overlaid on the parcels. So you have the Housing Authority owned parcel in light blue, and you also have the county parcel that's landlocked south of that, directly south, adjacent. So through our research in the RFP phase and through discussions, we've realized that there are multiple challenges, specifically title challenges and easements and parcel discrepancies that was kind of brought up during the research. And what we've done so far is, and still to this day, we're doing active research. We're also partnering with the city and the county and different agencies to make sure that all of these easements and parcel discrepancies are addressed accordingly. So again, it's a partnership with multiple agencies that's going to make this happen. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our architects who are going to present the site plan.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Aiken, Vice President for WHA Architects, and probably known as William Hejmalt. So we're a Santa Ana office. We've done a lot of projects here. We're happy to be back. It's great to be back with Related. It's always fun to do stuff in your own neighborhood. On the site plan, it's interesting when you look at it. It's actually a complicated site. It's got one point of entry. It's sharing another site with the county. But I think what happens is that those kind of opportunities grow into a better building. We'll talk about that briefly. But you know, the existing buildings next door, they've pretty much got their backs to us, so they really don't impose any sight or sound or issues like that. And then really what we want to do with this site is sort of internalize it a little bit and get away from the freeway, and then take on some of the conditions of light and ventilation that we can use as well. So if I do this right, we'll just go forward. So if you look at the site plan, if you can see the swimming pool and then the green area, if you really look at it, it's like an upside down F plan. And what's unique about the site is it actually allowed us to break the building up quite a bit. And what that did is bring more character to the building facade and allows us to focus on a central, more courtyard and pool area. And then you'll see in the architecture and our conceptual that we're trying to create a more focus. One of the things that we've learned for the past 30 years of us doing affordable housing and special needs housing is developing a sense of pride, a sense of community within the project, and allowing people to have spaces within spaces that they can go and retreat. Sometimes just to get away from their family, sometimes to get together in groups in 2s and 3s and 4s, and then sometimes actually get together like at the pool area in large groups. What's unique is the site actually forces to make an irregular building. So again, it's kind of a nice welcoming that what seemed difficult actually was to our advantage. So again, looking at part of architecture, I'd like to say that the architecture is so important, but what we mostly experience in life is really the spaces that we're in, and a lot of those are outdoors. So what's nice about this project too, the access to the sun, is that we actually get west light in the later afternoon when people are more around. That won't be as hot because during these courtyard times during the day, the building's actually going to shade those areas during the high sun. What it does, it allows us to make a lot of different varieties of spaces, again, meeting different kinds of needs, different kinds of size of groups, different interest levels, and different material patterns. So again, what it does is it brings the quality of a project to a much higher standard, and you can do that a lot with landscape, hardscape, and lighting. One of the other things that we're going to have to deal with is what we're calling the urban sound wall, and that will be talked a little bit more by the developer, but it's one way to deal with some of the sound, and that will be next to the off-ramp, so we'll touch on that in a minute. This gives you a general idea what it looks like. There's a lot of ways to deal with it, and enjoy playing with it. It's become very popular with graphics now throughout almost all our projects. As you know, we were the architects for Entrada. We've also done a lot of other things for you in the city. Related's done a lot. Right now we're looking at the Mission Revival. It's sort of one of the design concepts that was asked to be looked at. What's really nice about that, it's a simple kind of design, and you can articulate key elements to make them very important. So it's a great way to use landscape, highlight architecture, and also keep things really simple, which really is a great way for long-term maintenance, since these are held on for a long time. Again, this is some examples you can see. I'll show you in the next slide, but different Spanish and Mission Revivals. And then we have this one that has the turret entry that we did. Actually, it's Crestovia, what it is. It's the assisted care living opportunity, but you can begin to see the irregular shapes of the building. And so when we move to our site, you begin to see that F plan, that what it does, it articulates the end conditions. So a lot of opportunity for shade, a lot of opportunity for landscape, a lot of opportunity for courtyards and small spaces, and then be able to focus on the main central. Because when you drive into this narrow portal, the first thing you want to do is have this welcoming understand and a sense of quality. And then this is highlighted. You can see that as you would drive in, you can see sort of the undulation of the building, which I think has worked out really nice for us. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Related.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Hogan. I'm a development associate with Related. So, you know, as we provide high quality, affordable housing, oftentimes there is a huge factor that is involves in community involvement and investment. And so these are just some examples that we have of different ways, again, just not exhaustive lists, but a few of ways that we have invested in communities in the past and really seen the benefits. Example to the left, for example, is a project or a mini park that was installed in Anaheim for our Avon Dakota project, where we actually kind of cut short a street and cut it off, where it was then, we had some enhancements to that area and were able to make it more open for children to play. If you go to the other side, we actually, this is for the library. We developed a county library in Bloomington that was actually now kind of a central hub for that community. And oftentimes, just to preface that a lot of these improvements are not necessarily the easiest route, but they are important, and where we've seen huge benefits in the residents being happier, healthier, as well as having the opportunity for the outside local community to take part in the benefits of this project. And so this is definitely not something we want to downplay. Now, when it comes to this project in particular, we've been having conversations with local stakeholders. For instance, the Logan Neighborhood Council, Sam Romero there, where we have some proposed ideas of potential ways that we could, again, add benefits to the community. And so this is, again, not exhaustive list. This is open for discussion, obviously. But the first is for Chapis Park. If you're familiar, this is a park that has been in the Logan neighborhood for almost 50 years. And so it's actually an area that has received some recent investment, for instance, with a children's playground. And so this is the area that the community very much cares about. And so one idea that we've proposed is to actually add some improvements and enhancements to this park, as well as offer a portion of and donate a portion of the project developer fee towards this project. Another important project that's exciting would be a public plaza that would be located on the south side of the project. That would almost be a gateway. That would be open space that would be flexible for the community. And when you think of heading towards the transit center on Santa Ana Boulevard, that this would be an open green space that would be part of sort of this transformation process of an industrial corridor to an area that is, again, more green, kind of open park space. So definitely exciting for us to again, dream about this happening. And then finally, this was touched on briefly by the architect, but we are proposing to engage with the community as well as local artists in proposing public art or mural. Again, an example of a place that we thought would be a good location would be along the east side of the property, along the wall. And so you can see here an example from our Paradise Creek project, which is located in National City, which we actually brought in local artists there, and you can see it's a mix of paint and as well as different materials to really bring out the color, and it's a really vibrant example of how we're able to utilize art on the project. And so again, just another exciting factor that we look forward to working with the local community on. With that, I'd like to pass it off to Leanne for the final slide.
So I'm just going to briefly wrap it up. I mean, you've heard from the entire team of what we're proposing for this exciting project in partnership with the city and the county. So just a few key points we wanted to point out. You know, what you get with the related ACOF and WHA team is a vast amount of experience in terms of design and development. So, you know, a lot of our projects range from anywhere between 20 units to 500 units. We do new construction, rehab, transit-oriented design, luxury market rate, affordable, special needs, or permanent supportive housing. It runs the gamut. So, you know, that's what you're getting with us as a partner, really trying to achieve all the goals here in the city of Santa Ana. In terms of comprehensive social services, you know, definitely ACOF and James went really into depth on that. So just basically, we've really started to think about it even from the get-go of what we envision on the site. Obtain entitlements. You know, part of our due diligence process is we actually have a track record of 100% of achieving entitlements. And that's, you know, for us, that's very impressive and very important to not only our partners, but also our city partners. Community benefits, that was something that we really felt makes us stand apart a little bit, where we're even looking, you know, to donate part of our developer fee to improve the adjacent community. And again, you know, these are just some thoughts. Again, we would be working with city staff to determine really what's the best use for these funds. So again, not final in any way, shape, or form, but definitely the portion of developer fee is. And of course, due diligence. Randy really went into a little bit about that. We've really, as part of the RFP response, really dug in and tried to figure out all the issues and constraints associated with this project, and already came up with solutions and a path forward so that, you know, we can get to the finish line and build this project as quickly as possible. With that, that concludes our presentation, and we are here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll begin with commissioner questions on my left. Vice Chair Santana, are there any questions that you may want to ask?
Thank you, Vice Chair Ramos. I do have a question in regards to parking. Someone want to come up and speak about parking?
That's a question we'll figure out.
Sure. Question is, there are, I just had it written down. Great.
110.
114 units.
114 units, and I believe 114.
86 units. 86 units, 110 parking spots. 86 units, 110 spots.
Yeah.
So we'll start with questions from
Sure.
Vice Chair Santana.
So I understand that being that it's in a transit zone, it kind of gets exempt from the state's requirements as far as parking. Granted, some may say that a lot of folks aren't driving or they're commuting or there's alternatives. But when you offer a wide variety of intensive supportive services, and those are providers, caretakers, you name it, they're going to drive. And being that it's so close to a residential zone, what are you going to do to help alleviate some of the parking in that neighborhood?
Do you want to start with the premise supportive side? We can also talk about that.
So on the supportive unit side, especially when we have individuals, we don't really need a one-to-one parking ratio for our tenants because many of them do not have cars. So usually, we find that if we have around 33% of a ratio to our supportive housing units to parking, that is enough for both the tenants and the staff.
And how'd you come up with that ratio, 30%?
It's based on our portfolio. Yeah. And our case managers, yeah, why don't you speak?
Yeah, and our case managers are on site, so they're providing the majority of all the services on site. So this project's going to have 3 full-time case managers, plus
So
3
where do
parking
they park?
spaces. In the parking spaces.
Parking space, right?
There's 3 of them.
Mr. Justin, there is a, it's off of a First Street, it's similar to this property, right? Where, next to El Ranchito, off of, First and Tustin?
The First Point 1 and 2 project?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I've driven there a couple times, and it's sort of the same as this project, but they also face tight parking issues. And it's just something, I understand that I'm not going to compare apples to oranges, and one can say that they don't drive, but they have friends and they have people.
Sure, sure. And what we also do in supportive services, we have different shift hours too. So primarily not all 3 of them will be there at the same time. Maybe 8 to 2, then another one will come in from 3 to 5, and then carry over shift hours to try to stay there till 8:30.
Well, I think, we do a lot of these projects. A lot of times they get down to 0.75 when they're in the transit zone. So in this case, we actually have a lot. But one of the things that happens, because they have the opportunity to manage, there will be a shift in parking. The people do have cars generally have them because they're off working and trying to do something. So there's that shared, and they can actually manage that as they work through it. And we found that, I don't know, I've probably done 35 of these projects in the past 10 years. And it seems to work out well. The toughest time is on the weekends, where it's a friend thing. And that's true, that does have a little bearing. But generally on a day-to-day working, there's as many cars gone as there are there.
I would add, Commissioner Santana, one key fact about this project is that it is a transit-oriented development. And similar to the depot at Santiago, it's right within walking distance of the train station and of the future OC streetcar. So you see, I mean, it's just a factor to keep in mind, different from other projects in the city.
And then partially the way they're laid out is that you have 1-bedroom studios, and the 2 bedrooms all have 1 space, and then the 3 and 4 have 2 as a tandem. So anytime you have a unit that doesn't have a car, you have an available space. So when you look at the 30% out of the 110, you're 30 to 25 spaces that potentially can be managed by the staff, which is really very common.
I just know that in that side of town, there's a lot of development and parking, and will be an issue, especially with, I mean, not to confuse different projects, but I know that it's always been an issue here in Santa Ana, and being, I'll stick to parking, and then I can skip over someone else. Chair, that'd be great.
Thank you, Vice Chair Santana. Commissioner Tardif, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First, yeah, my business is close by. I don't think there's, Commissioner Santana, I don't think there's a lot of residential in the immediate area of this development. This railroad tracks separate this development from Logan, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
Yeah,
correct.
that's
That is
correct.
correct. Yes, it does. The railroad tracks separate this project from the Logan neighborhood.
From the residential.
And there's not really any other residential in close proximity.
No, it's zoned industrial right next door.
Yeah, and then the train station is across Santa Ana Boulevard on the south. Okay, to the developers, I've noticed it seems that there's a single entrance and exit, and that's off of the cul-de-sac of Washington Avenue. Is that right?
That's correct. As it's currently designed, As it's currently designed, there is 1 point of ingress and egress. Part of our due diligence that we're going to be working with Caltrans is to determine if we can get a second curb cut off of Santa Ana Boulevard. Based upon our initial preliminary read of the design guidelines from Caltrans, you cannot have a curb cut within 500 feet of an exit of a freeway. However, there has been some documentation that's been forwarded to us that we've already forwarded to our title officer to start digging into whether or not there's already been agreed upon ability to go ahead and deviate from this design standard by the county and the city to go ahead and have a second curb cut. So then if that's the case, we would go ahead and explore that option and discuss that matter with city staff.
Okay, thank you. Along that same line with the single entrance and exit on Washington Avenue, do you believe that would be approved by the fire authority?
Yeah, we've looked at access with the 150-foot hose pole, and so as you take our drive all the way down at the end, there's sort of a hammerhead. So we're assuming that they'll be able to manage that on site and still have the hose pole length. So, but that'll be finalized with them, obviously, at the last, when we get that far. But we've accommodated what we think will work.
Okay. And then another question. Along with the curb cut, would there be a possibility for a bus stop there on Santa Ana Boulevard, or is that asking too much?
We could definitely look into it, and we probably have to reach out to our partners at OCTA to see if that's a viable option.
Yeah, because I believe the buses run up and down Santa Ana Boulevard there pretty regularly.
The project does have great, as Jetson mentioned, availability to transit, and so that's one of the great benefits of the site.
Thank you. Last question. Will there be pedestrian access to Santa Ana Boulevard?
Currently, as designed, we have a public plaza, so basically, yes, there is pedestrian access coming directly from Santa Ana Boulevard. And so if, we mentioned about the second curb cut, we would still probably try to maintain the pedestrian access as well, so that families have a direct access into the property without having to go all the way around.
I don't recall if there's a sidewalk there on Santa Ana Boulevard that the pedestrians could access from this facility to walk up to Santiago Boulevard and across the street over to the train station.
We'll have to explore that, definitely, and see if it's permissible by Caltrans as well, because I know it's coming on.
So there currently is no sidewalk there?
It looks like
So he's asking if
So
there's
I think it's vacant, right? I think it's vacant site, so
Yeah, that's
I'm not
not-
sure there's any improvements to date on it. Again, we can get back to you on that matter, but it's something we are, as we go further into our design process, we will explore it.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Tardif. Commissioner Ursula.
Thank you. I have several points. First, to commend you on a few of the things we're seeing here. The architecture, really great work on the previous projects that you mentioned as well. I think it fits, and you do a good job of considering the fit in the local neighborhood. So that's a really great design. Also want to commend you on the affordability levels, on keeping those at 30% AMI. That's absolutely the need. I had the question, and it came up in your presentation later, as to your distribution of rooms, because your Triada project had a large percentage of two and three bedrooms, and in this project you diversify it. But you answered it right into your presentation as well. So I'd like to see. I commend you for that good, even distribution of sizes as well that can meet the need both at the city and the county level. Also, with the combination of permanent, supportive, and family housing, I have heard this before, especially at strictly permanent supportive locations, how important it is to have a number of services and supports, and how delicate of a balance it is to be able to have good synergy with family housing nearby. So it sounds like you're anticipating that, and there's plenty of supportive services. It sounds like those are being made available to everyone. I wonder if you might speak to that a little bit, if you have previous experience with this combination of permanent, supportive, and family housing.
Definitely. We have a a building out in Compton, South LA area, where we have family and individuals, and it works well together. So we even have chronic homelessness mixed with families of homeless, and all the services are for everyone that's on the property. We do a lot of social recreational activities. We have an upcoming Memorial Day festival coming on this Friday. We do things to like community meetings and so forth. So it's a combination that we're fairly, we're aware of, and it works well.
Great. But we do have multiple properties where we are mixing supportive housing for individuals with general affordable families throughout Southern California. Even the one we just opened in Fullerton has a combination of the two.
Great, thank you.
And also at Related, we have a couple of projects that have mixed population communities. So in Bloomington, we have intergenerational seniors, families, and also special needs. We have 11 special needs units. In the city of Pomona, we have a project that's a third of the units that are permanent supportive housing units. 60 units, of which 21 units are special needs. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Also wanted to commend you on the prevailing wage and offering good jobs with benefits to folks who will be working on constructing the project. Commend you on your outreach to the Logan neighborhood, and also mention that the Lacey neighborhood is nearby as well, and another impacted community, and just encourage outreach and communication there. And I know that Related has experience in that neighborhood with the Triada project, and Related ended up being very receptive, and I recall I was part of that neighborhood mobilization, at that time to communicate those needs, and it ended up being a very successful project. And then, so I have a few questions as well. Some of them have to do with, for example, how will you manage the use of the plaza if it's open to the public, which sounds like you're making it a community amenity, which is a need, and it's something good, and I'm curious about how the management of that will occur.
So typically what we've done in the past with similar kind of circumstances is that it's still part of the project. So it's managed by property management. Because it's a public plaza at the same time, and we were thinking of maybe there's an ability to have arts or showcases, things like that, it would probably definitely have to be a partnership with our social service provider to see not only with property management managing it, but also social services thinking outside the box of what would work here and how to also integrate the public plaza with the greater community. So again, it's going to be definitely a lot of synergies and collective energies between, and also from the city's perspective.
Right.
If there's something you want to see there, we are all ears, whether it's certain types of programming, or even with design, it's just, we see this as a connection point to really seamlessly integrate the property with the greater community.
Right. And it's, I think, something I was going to mention also, if there's coordination with the city, like currently the city has other public spaces, but this can be referenced, right? Like there's additional space available in this site. Also with the local neighborhoods that I mentioned, and probably some of the nonprofits that are also in the area, supporting just community activity. I think also just the public art component sounds great, and it sounds like you're wanting to find local people. And I think now the city has an somebody on staff.
Arts and culture specialist.
Arts and culture specialist on staff. And there's a commission for arts and culture, and there's affordable housing projects targeting our artist community, and there's just local nonprofits and organizations that have been involved in the arts for a long time. So I think this is a great opportunity to tap into local talent. Great. So the last 2 points that I have, one of them is on project management and community outreach. And I have experience in working on access to housing and issues with our community. And sometimes because there's such a great need, it feels like the process to access affordable housing could be very cumbersome, and sometimes people have a challenge in getting together their required paperwork for the process, and or if they're living in the building, they might need some supports and tenant services. So I'm just wondering if there, I know you work with a project management company. How open are you to additional, tenant services or liaisons, that can help to make that process as accessible as possible?
So with all our initial lease-ups, we will work with the on-site property management team, and since we're going to be the lead service provider, we work with the referrals from local agencies that are referring their potential clients to the actual to lease up to be tenants of the building. So we assist with everything that maybe they may not have, everything from applying for an ID card or driver's license to obtaining their income verification from the Social Security or DPSS, and work with them throughout the lease-up process. We do initial on-site interviews in terms of they need assistance in filling out their housing authority application paperwork and so forth. So everything's in conjunction with the property management team.
Great, and you, right? You're
Yeah, our services team.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank
Commissioner,
you. Yes.
Commissioner Sura, too, I would add to that, which is a question that has come up at City Council as well, on the preference for Santa Ana residents. So under our affordable housing funds, policies and procedures, any projects that are funded by the city are required to implement a preference, not a requirement, but a local preference that prioritizes Santa Ana residents on the waiting list for projects that we finance. And so this project will have that local preference applied to in their waiting list as well, in accordance with those policies and procedures that were adopted by City Council.
Great, thank you. So just close attention to the outreach plan for getting the early notification, and getting so that people know that they can get on that list, and the supports that you'd mentioned that you can offer. And then lastly, there's a few things. There was seemed like a report offered by a third party reviewing the several proposals by Kaiser Marston Associates. And so I see some of the considerations they are naming, and one of them talks about related is using H&SC incomes and rents as opposed to TCAC incomes and rents, which would increase the amount of permanent debt supported by the project. Could you explain that to us?
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to go ahead? Yeah, I think you guys corrected that already.
What's the date on that?
It was their analysis was from April 5th. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure you guys addressed that.
So part of SB 341 was that if any low mod funds were used for the project, you would have to use health and safety code rents, and those are determined by HCD. And through the course of just discussions with staff, that we determined that there isn't a need to use health and safety code rents, just the normal tax credit rents.
Yeah, I think this is the report's. The report is outdated, perhaps, because a lot of the last, I would say, month and a half going with a lot of dialogue between between city staff, county staff, and then related and ACOF. We've been starting to clarify a lot of these items.
Great, thank you. And maybe for future further explanation, just to get a little bit more background on that?
Yeah, so the health and safety code rents are tied to the housing successor agency projects and funds that were that are approved for cities, and that TCAC rents are tied to tax credits for various affordable housing, all affordable housing projects. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. But their TCAC rents are slightly higher, and so why that component was important for our real estate advisor to point out is that if the developer, if Related uses the HNSC rents, which they don't have to, then they would have a larger financial gap, which means that they would be asking the city for more money than what we're actually offering and able to provide. Because they can use the TCAC rents, that means they're able to charge more per rent, still at 30% AMI, which is consistent with what all of our other affordable housing projects charge, and therefore they're able to finance this project they're able to finance this project with higher rents. If that makes sense.
That does make sense. And now I'm curious about the impact on, like what the difference is on those rents and the impact on families. And I understand that overall it makes, more funds available as a whole to additional projects. But now I'm more curious as to the impact on the families. You might not have that information right away, but.
Yeah, I don't have the right now in front of me the TCAC rents and the HNSC rents. We can send those to you.
Is there a rough estimate? 10, 15, 20% more?
What do you think?
I don't know them off the top of my head, but it depends on the unit size and the targeting of the unit. Sometimes sometimes it's more or sometimes it's less, so it varies. But for affordable housing, basically, depending on the sources of money and what each source of money requires you to use in terms of a rent schedule, we always have to underwrite to whatever is the most stringent. And so, but most affordable housing projects use the tax credit rent. It is based on 30% of that household's income. It's just that this other rent schedule, they calculate that in a very different way. So most affordable housing projects do use the TCAC rents, and it is no more than 30% of their income.
There is a difference in also just the occupancy size. So that's another reason why there's a slight difference in the rent limit.
Meaning the 2-bedroom versus?
Yeah, so Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe TCAC uses a 1.5 person per bedroom, and I think the health and safety code, is it one person per bedroom plus one. So in other words, a 2-bedroom is the same for the most part from TCAC or health and safety, but when you get to like a 1-bedroom, for example, it's a 1.5 versus a 2-person household size. I know there's going to be a few other questions, so I'm going to take a look. Hopefully I have internet access right now, and I can get back to you on the difference in the rent limits.
Thank you. And then just on that same report, NPLH funds, Related is not proposing to apply for NPLH funds. However, the city may want to require that. So this is 321 in our packet.
So there's, it's really great. It's a bad problem, or it's a really good problem to have. There are, because of the location of the site, there's so many ways to finance this project. And trust me, we've had a number of lengthy conversations with city staff. The direction that we think is probably in the best interest, knowing the city's goals, the county's goals, and in particular to get to the finish line as quickly as possible to get the project financed. We are targeting a 9% tax credit application. And so by doing so, it avoids additional applications for funding sources that maybe only come around once a year, maybe twice a year. And then for that reason, we are working with a 9% model in mind. But again, we understand that the amount of funds coming from the city and the county are fixed. And if there should be any kind of issue in the future in terms of, cost increase or whatnot, it is the responsibility of the developer and our partners to figure out the solution. We are not going to be coming back to you whatsoever for additional funds.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Ursula. Commissioner Vasquez, do you have any questions?
I have no other questions at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Limon?
Yes, I have a few questions regarding page 13 about social services. So the main services provided for all tenants, I really like them, but where would they take place, how often, and how would it be managed on a yearly basis? Because I feel like they're a handful.
So all the supportive services is conducted on-site, Monday through Friday. The hours vary. Some of our case managers have a 9 to 5 schedule, and some of them have a later schedule. Usually with a family building, we try to have case management staff stay till 8:30. We provide, again, an array of services throughout the year.
No, that's not a page. But how would tenants be selected to live in the units?
So typically on a project, what we do is 6 months prior to the completion of the project, we open up the application process for the for residents and just the neighborhoods and community members to apply for the community. And when it gets closer to the completion of the project, for those 43 units that are not the PSH units, those are going to be submitted, and then we're going to be working with property management to determine the eligibility for the units to move in. And once they're selected, then they sign the lease and they move in. For the other 43 units of the permanent supportive housing units, those units are in collaboration with our service providers and the city and the county as well.
The city of San Diego.
The city of San Diego. Yep, that's right. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, anyone want to add?
I could add a little bit. So to the extent there's a coordinated entry system in a community, then the supportive housing units would be filled using that system. And we use a housing first approach to the supportive housing units.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Limon. Commissioner Aguinaga, do you have questions?
Thank you, but it seems to me that some of my college commissioners already answered many of them. My concern was traffic. Commissioner Santana, thank you for asking about that. I appreciate it. Thank you for clarifying what the plans are. And I want to thank you to the community of friends, to the county of Orange, and especially to the city of Santa Ana, Jason, and our staff for doing this wonderful project. I've been in Santa Ana for 40 years, and I think that this project will enhance the quality of life that we have. I've seen so many changes, and I'm very proud to be part of Santa Ana, being a citizen. Thank you so much for your help, and also to the architects, to the firm that you chosen. Good job, Jason. Thank you. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you, Commissioner Aguinaga. Commissioner Frazier.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. It's very thorough. I have a couple questions in regards to density and capacity. The property, as we've already talked about, is surrounded by industrial and the highway. And I know that there's been a number of projects that have been put to the city here recently that have been by residential areas where the density was a really big issue. Our counts are roughly about 7,000 homeless that we have in Orange County right now. And I think at max capacity, give or take, this will take care of about 300 people if it's completely packed out. Were there any considerations or barriers to having a more dense property as residential impact would be minimal with this location?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. Did we look at it as a higher density project?
Was there any consideration given to making it a higher density property?
We did look at that. A lot of it is the circulation. The parking becomes a bigger problem because of the triangulation. That's really hard. That's hard with parking, not so hard with the building. So it ended up back on the ground, and the relationship there with the studios allowed us to utilize the site probably the most efficient way. Triada was an example where it was really interesting. Steve Raitt, who's the in-house architect, we went back and forth between, if I recall, something like 57 units to 78 or whatever it is, which are townhouses actually. And we went back and forth, and the efficiency of that irregular shape was we could get the parking to support it to more family units. So that's why one of the reasons they're larger. And the economics was, in the long-term hold, is that those 20 extra units paid that debt ratio. So there's a lot of parts to it. It's not just the number of units, it's how the income and the layout, cost construction.
So, so parking is the biggest barrier being able
Parking drives everything still.
And underground parking in this lot would not be an option?
Going to a podium, we looked at, going to a podium, just you have so many irregular triangle spaces that we utilize those more for landscape and for the building. As you saw, the F plan, as I call it, allows the building to articulate itself. When you do a podium, you don't build it like that. It'll cost a fortune. It's really hard.
Right.
Let me say a few things on behalf of the developer. So, there's a lot of site constraints, as you can see with the site. Being so close to a freeway as well, and being that there's a lot of large families, we are very aware of the number of kids that are going to be on the site. So you want to make sure you also balance open space as well. So, we could have probably put more units there, but we really felt we had to focus a lot on the amenities and provide ample open space for kids to play on site without having to necessarily go out into the community. So that's always another constraint from the development standpoint. Also, in terms of just the architectural character, you don't want to go too high up where it doesn't seamlessly, or it kind of pops out like a sore thumb. You want it to really seamlessly integrate within the surrounding community. So there was a lot of things that were at play, and so we felt this was probably a nice balance between the economics with smart development, as well as really great design.
Yeah, it's a great looking property. I just, with us being in a housing crisis, I just wonder where we're being heavy on what we're choosing. I was also curious, let's see, what do you have planned for is the first floor planned for residential or for retail on that property? Because I didn't see it and I may have just overlooked it.
Yeah, there's no commercial. You might be talking about the common areas where we would have property management and social services. They would be on the ground floor, but there's also going to be residential units as well. As well as there's, off of Santa Ana Boulevard, eyes on the street is what we call it. So we're not turning our back from the street, we're actually embracing it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Frazier. Commissioner Perez.
Thank you very much. I just really want to commend you for an outstanding job. I know this took a lot of time, a lot of effort. Thanks for the county for being here and the collaboration throughout this entire process, and our city staff. And I know anytime you put together a project like that, you're always asking the what ifs, back and forth. And I'm really surprised and happy that you're engaged the community. You really gotten through the entire process. The only question that I really want to ask is, in regards to our social services, I know that the Vista Del Rio site, you also provide services. Do you know statistically how we're doing right now with that site as far as retention and, and how we're just overall social services at that specific site?
We're doing very well at Vista Del Rio. So I don't know the exact percentage, but I'm pretty sure it's in the higher 80s, lower 90s bracket. That population that's housed there is developmentally disabled. So the success rate and everything that's going on with housing and the social services, working with Project Independence there, it's a great project. It's very successful.
And for your hiring on those types of positions, are you looking for individuals and organizations that understand the community and have worked with the community before? Because I know you're based throughout Southern California.
Yeah, all our case managers have a bachelor's degree in social work or psychology with 2 years experience working with people with mental health and that have been formerly homeless.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Perez. A lot of the questions that I had have also already been answered, and I just want to commend you again for going down to those deeper affordability levels. There is a lot of need in that community. So with that said, I'm wondering what your community outreach plan will look like to ensure that it's individuals that live in those adjacent neighborhoods in both Logan and Lacey that will be housed in this development.
We have yet to write anything in terms of a formal plan, but I know there's been some guidelines in terms of within the city, giving us guidance. We would be working directly with city staff to ensure, and also with the county, to ensure that, all the major requirements are hit. And so, I don't know, Judson, if you want to touch upon that.
Sure. Yeah, in our loan that we execute with Related, it'll outline some of our baseline requirements for outreach and engagement for for leasing up the units. One component of that is that they'll be required to hold at least 2 workshops in the community. Second is the implementation of our local preference requirement for Santa Ana residents. Another is that they'll have to have a plan that they follow that then we will audit as well to verify that our local preference is being applied. There's a couple items that I'm forgetting in that text, but surrounding that, as the project gets closer to completion and they open up the pre-application process, we'll coordinate with them so that we're able to blast that information out to our local community so that as many Santa Ana residents know how to apply to the project. Some of that to what you'll see in the next couple of weeks with the First Street apartments, for example. Yeah, and the workshops, I think those are some main points that I'd like to make.
Related, we're very familiar with a lot of, neighborhood outreach and then community involvement. So, whatever the requirements are, we're happy to abide by.
Thank you. And I know there are requirements and there are guidelines. So my interest is also in hearing if you have any past experience with any of your other developments and going beyond those guidelines and engaging the community from the very beginning. And I'll just give a very quick example. So not too far from this proposed project will be another affordable housing development being done by National Corps, actually on Santa Ana Boulevard and French, I believe. So they've been proactive and they will be developing this community outreach plan, abiding by those guidelines, but also going a step forward and they're meeting with the community members that live in that neighborhood now to also see what else needs to be done to ensure that residents will be ready to apply and will be eligible for this project once it's ready. So I'm just wondering if there's any past experience that you have doing that or doing more than what is required and seeing how that would transfer here.
Absolutely. So actually, as part of our RFP, and I'm just blanking on the name, so anybody from the team, if you remember who we met, Bill Whitty, who's our chairman of Related, specifically reached out to a few key folks who are stakeholders. So that's actually how we got the idea for the $100,000 donation of developer fee. I'm really apologize. I'm blanking on the name.
By Sam Romero.
Thank you. Yes, and so we reached out to him, and he basically described the status. And so, as part of the due diligence, I remember looking at you had a grant or some sort that you got to go ahead and do a new playground. I was taking a look on YouTube at your grand opening kind of ceremony or grand opening, and so looking at that and looking at children playing, that's part of our due diligence already to date. In terms of past projects as well, we involve a lot of the adjacent properties. So we, as part of our due diligence, we do reach out to all of our adjacent neighbors. Whether or not it comes into fruition to have a actual just maybe design charrette, that is something that we have done in the past for a number of our projects, including market rate. And then so you have not only local stakeholders from the city's perspective or the county's perspective, but we also weigh in what does the community want to see there. And same thing, in terms of like the public plaza, things of that nature, that's something that we can also consider to have like more of a design charrette. We do have experience doing that with the idea that there's always that caveat going, we want to listen to you, we hear you, we would come back with our design. And then at that point, kind of tell them, we heard, these are the comments we heard, here's the ones we can address, here's the ones maybe we can't, and maybe here's why. Also with the sound wall, I see that being more of an ability to have a design charrette going. Maybe like we found out that there's someone we can reach out to who's kind of like helps to coordinate a lot of the public art. That is something, we're used to seeing on a lot of our projects, public art requirements. And so that's something that we're very passionate about. I don't know if Akoff, you want to talk about any of your community outreach beyond that?
I think you're asking about outreach to help with lease up?
Just anything.
Or
Yeah,
generally?
so any community outreach, but then, yes, I have a lot of interest in how are you going above and beyond to inform the community of what this lease-up process looks like, and even providing additional workshops to let them know this is what credit score you will need, and this is what you can do to improve your credit score. So things of that sort.
Okay. In terms of general outreach for properties, we often do participate in if there's a neighborhood council or there are committees or stakeholders that represent the communities in which our developments are going to be built. We do meet with them and kind of share our project, and very similar to what Leanne was talking about in terms of getting their feedback and keeping people abreast. And we usually use those types of stakeholder groups to keep them informed about, this is where we are in the process, the development process. After we kind of get to the point where we've kind of figured out what the project is. So that's one way we can keep people informed. And then our developments often have like an affirmative marketing strategy. So in terms of which groups we might inform, and it's often the stakeholders that we've been meeting with throughout that we'll let them know. Okay, we're getting ready to lease up. On the supportive housing side, it is a little bit different because in most communities we work where there is a coordinated entry system. So it's more around kind of working with service providers for making sure that the people we would be targeting for that property are getting entered into the system and their names are getting into the system so that their names will be there when it's time to lease up, and a lot of those come through the service agencies and in terms of referrals for the supportive housing units. So those two function a little bit differently.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And my interest is in those 30% that are in permanent
The large family units.
Yeah, and it's great, and thank you so much. I know Commissioner Sue already said this, but the fact that you're providing larger units will mean that more of our families from that community are eligible for these units because they do have those larger families.
And I just wanted to add one thing real quickly.
Commissioner Perez.
My background's in education, and I think sometimes we fail and we think that systems create opportunities. Well, unfortunately, systems also divide communities. And I think what we're continuing looking for is going above and beyond what is systems. Because sometimes the system, unfortunately, and it's not intentionally, we have an awesome staff here that goes above and beyond, but we're still missing communities. We had a needs assessment, we had a survey. We had a very too low of a turnout, in my opinion, unacceptable. It wasn't because we didn't try, it wasn't because we didn't have all these systems, but those systems weren't working. And I think that's the key. I look at your project and I'm blown away. I'm like excited. I'm like, wow, this is what we need. But the issue is if we still miss those communities and those individuals in those communities that we don't have an extra workshop in, hey, let's see your credit score. Okay, we're going to work with you. And I think the outreach from the social services is so key and integrated because you have a perfect team. It's just that extra oomph, taking it to the next level. And I know you're going to get there. And we just want to voice that, and just tell you, our city staff, everyone's working so hard. And as you continue this process, this is something that we're continuing as a commission, is taking a look at that extra above and beyond. Just like you did with everything in this proposal, you've gone above and beyond. And I know you will, and it's just a thought process as you keep in mind. I'm excited and can't wait to vote.
So let me actually just, there's two pieces, both Randy and I want to go ahead and talk about lease up because that's also one of the components that I missed. I talked more about design and getting the community involved. One of the ways we've also gone beyond the requirements is that we've actually personally hand delivered like a bunch of applications to like your library, your local library. In some cases when there's a senior population, we go to the neighboring senior centers, not just within the city, but also a little bit farther out because you do want to try to reach a broader range. We do also always have a project website that gets, as soon as we start construction, it starts to go live. So, we do reach out beyond just the normal requirements for just newspapers and things like that. But, we hear you. Let us think about some things that we can do outside the box. But specifically, those are some of the things that we've also done that, not necessarily required, but we think it's important, especially dealing with a preference that we would want to do here as well. Randy wanted to also say a few things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I was actually the project manager on the Paradise Creek project in National City. So that art wall that you saw, the art mural that we prepared and we installed, but also we actually went above and beyond the affirmative marketing plan that we prepared for the city. We actually got a local preference ordinance passed, but we also facilitated and held workshops, application workshops for the residents. So we actually reached out to a local church because that's where a lot of people congregate. And we also translated the documents, English and Spanish. So we had translators there as well. And that was just one of the above and beyond calls that we did in that community.
Excellent.
Thank you for providing those examples. That's exactly what I would like to see done with this project moving forward. Not saying that you haven't done it yet, and I'm very happy to hear that you have worked with a stakeholder group and that it has included Sam Romero, who I think everybody on this commission knows. But when we think of the Logan neighborhood, it's very easy to see that it's a lot of single-family homes. And I would like us to think a little bit more about the Lacey neighborhood, where it is majority apartments. These are the renters that are living in very overcrowded housing conditions, very substandard housing conditions. So these are the people that will benefit from your project. So I ask that you expand that stakeholder group to include key community leaders from the Lacey neighborhood. And I offer myself to you to help you with that process. Commissioner Ursua also has been working in that neighborhood for many years and was did a lot of work around around Triada and ensuring that it was a project that would benefit the members of that community. So thank you for that and for explaining a little bit more. And I had a question about your community room as well. So I'm wondering, what will programming at that community room look like? And will that community room be available to members of the community that are not tenants, that are not living in that development?
So the community room is where all the life skill groups are conducted. The life skill groups that I shared with during the presentation earlier. We also, all our community rooms have the amenities of a full kitchen, stove, refrigerator, and everything, where we conduct our cooking groups and so forth in our gatherings, our community meetings, and our outside speakers, consultants from outside agencies talking about new resources that are in the community.
The other one's a little bit harder to answer. Because of tax credits regulations, typically what happens with those community spaces, they are for the enjoyment of the tenants. It's not to say that, if that's a direction you want to go, we can definitely explore our options. I know that, for example, if it's commercial space, like it can be deemed commercial, then it becomes ineligible for tax credits. So that affects the gap. And so it's just something to consider. Typically, the way it works is that it is really just geared for the tenants' enjoyment. But again, we have the public plaza, which we felt that we could argue is really also for the tenants to enjoy. So a lot of it is dealing with what regulations are in place for the financing sources.
Thank you, and I would encourage us to think creatively, and even just thinking of that as community space and making that space available to different existing community groups that may need space to hold a meeting, or local nonprofits that may be interested in coming and providing programming for the residents that live in that development and in the surrounding community as well.
We'll have our attorneys start to think about it, if there's limitations that we can go, or not limitations, but maybe some nuances to the regulations where maybe it's not on a regular basis. There's no formal commitment, but if they want to use the space every now and again, some sort of license agreement. There's no money exchanging hands, there's no profit being held, but again, we will have to go ahead and look into it and see what we can do within the confines of the regulations.
Thank you. And then just one last thing. So I also want to commend you for choosing to donate a percentage of your developer fee to help improve that community. I don't think we see that often. So thank you. And you're leading by example, and I hope that developers that follow will also do this. And as you're deciding how that money should be spent, I know you mentioned that you would consult with city staff, but I would also urge you to consult with the stakeholder group that will include more community members to also hear firsthand what their real and immediate needs are. Thank you. I will take more commissioner comments if there are any. Commissioner Sua.
Just wondering if you.
I do and I don't. There were some updates.
Okay.
Between
the time frames?
Yeah, there were some updates between the time frames. For 2018, it ranged, for instance, the difference being from a one-bedroom, $59 of difference, so an increase with TCAC rents, an increase of $59, to a four-bedroom unit, which was the most, which was $200 or $201 exactly. What I'm seeing now is that they actually match for 2019. I believe the TCAC and
They're looking like they're
the same, I believe. So I do need to confirm that because that doesn't sound quite right, but we were looking at both online and it looks like they match, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, we would like to get back to you.
Yeah.
We'll have an answer for you tomorrow. We'll send it via email to Judson and get you the exact delta. The reason why we're talking, that's why it's a yes and no answer, is that when we initially responded to the RFP, it was in 2018. Every year, TCAC as well as the Health and Safety Code rent limits come out, and they usually come out around this time, so it's usually around April, May. So that's why you can see that we're going, well, it depends on when KMA's last pro forma you're looking at. So what we'll do is go ahead and do a comparison for you for 2018 when we initially applied, and then in comparison to now, which are the current rent limits.
Great, thank you, because I'm just holding on to that in the sense that if there was I forgot what the H standard for?
Health and safety? The
health and safety, if there was that standard available or, for us, that $200 difference for a family is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so I want to still be able to consider if that is an option that maybe Related is in a better position to absorb than putting that onto our families. So I would love to hear those numbers.
Okay, we'll start with the numbers, and then we can touch base with city staff on next steps.
Great, thank you.
Are there any additional questions from commissioners?
I just have,
Vice Chair Santana, go ahead.
And I'm gonna go back to active transportation and walking. And so I was looking online, and it looks like sidewalk is kind of a little bit of an issue, Judson. So I know that, since folks are not going to be driving, they will be walking. What will the city do to help, establish walkway? I know there's a train station that's a very active train station. I think you and I have canvassed that neighborhood, and so when I was there at night, it's you could easily just wind up inside those the tracks, and there's what is the, I mean, it's kind of hard because this is a little bit of a city and issue, correct? Mm-hmm. How would we resolve any of those concerns?
Well, so it's a complicated question because I'd have to refer to the question to our Public Works Department. But from the knowledge that I do know is that our Public Works Department is currently working on a master plan type development at the train station together with the county on a county-owned parcel that's adjacent.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And so,
but it's zoned as a commercial, right?
The industrial right next door.
Industrial, sorry. Yeah.
Yes. But I only bring that up because this project, the Deepwood Santiago, the beginning of the OC streetcar, the development of the train station and the adjacent parcel is collectively a complete overhaul and enhancement of that area. I think in 10 years that area is going to look quite different than it does now with the development of this project and the streetcar right there and the development of the Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center area. So, you know, with those enhancements will come more walkability enhancements to ensure that it becomes a very walkable area for all the tenants in that area.
So if the county consolidates with the city, then they are pretty much absolved of that property, right? And that becomes our city property, no?
No, it's quite a bit more complicated than that. So the arrangement will be a tenants in common agreement where the county will continue to own their rights to the proportion of their property, which is 0.83 acres, and will continue to own the rights to our portion of the property, which is 1.43 acres. But the property will be owned jointly by the two, and then we will have one lease agreement with Related as a
term. Is it 99 years?
That item is still under discussion. We're anticipating to finalize the lease term in the next 2 weeks.
So it has to go first to the board of supervisors for their approval, then it goes before council? Right?
Actually, no. So the lease term is going to be finalized. Again, it's going to be finalized in the next 2 weeks. We're going to then recommend this same commitment of our affordable housing funds on the ground lease to our city council and the housing authority board. But the difference in the item that you're seeing today is it will have the lease term.
On page 310, it says the final approval of the joint ownership development Crossroads at Washington, the final approval of the tenant in common agreement and joint power agreement would be contingent upon final approval of the county board of supervisors. Then it follows the exact term of the ground lease is still being negotiated with Related. The term will be finalized and agreed upon before the item is considered by city council and housing authority. So it has to go to the county first, then to the city.
No. So the item, as you just read directly, the term is going to be agreed upon with Related, and then the item will be considered by the city council and housing authority, and then we're going to bring back. Then the county is going to start their next steps in the process to bring their recommendation to the county, and we described that a little backwards on the top of page 3.6, where we state, following approval by the city council / housing authority, county staff will work towards bringing the project to the board of supervisors for selection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Related. Thank you, city staff. Thank you, commissioners, for your questions. I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote. But before I do that, are there any members of the public that would like to speak on the matter? If so, you may fill out a request to speak form with the recording secretary. You have 3 minutes to speak. Also, we will not accept any additional request to speak cards once we begin the public comment session. If you haven't already done so, please give your form to the recording secretary. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak? Seeing as there are none, do we have a motion to approve item 3, approve a pre-loan commitment of $3,971,440 of affordable housing funds and a ground lease to the Related Companies of California and a community of friends for the development of the Crossroads at Washington project?
I move to approve the project.
Thank you, Commissioner Aguinaga. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Frazier. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Are there any abstentions? The matter is approved by unanimous consent. Congratulations. The second item on the business calendar is item number 4, authorize issuance of fiscal year 2019 through 2020 requests for proposals for affordable housing development. And I know we have a few commissioners that need to excuse themselves.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Frazier and Commissioner. Oh, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, staff, if you'd like to report on that.
You've got our current RFP in the packet for review. We are bringing it to you tonight for approval and to City Council on June 18th. We're planning to issue the RFP for affordable housing development on July 1st. There's really no changes from the last RFP that we issued. The main changes are just we're going to do 3 due dates instead of 4, so October, January, and April. We've also updated the available funds. This year we are planning on $4.2 million. We have the same funding sources, inclusionary housing funds, home funds, and CDBG funds. We do have one new one-time use source of funds that we've also included, and that's the Rental Rehabilitation Grant Program. These are basically program income from a federal funding grant program that was authorized in 1983 for rehabilitation of small rental properties. We gave the money out as a city for the purpose for which it was authorized, and then the grant program was closed out. We eventually received all of the repayments of the loans, and so we are authorized now to reallocate that for new affordable housing development. So that is a one-time source that you see in there. And then we will be marketing and publishing the availability of the RFP through the Orange County Register. We'll also post it on our website, and we will share the information with our community partners, Kennedy Commission, T110C, and Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing. And we also have an interested parties list of developers that we maintain and we communicate with as well. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the commission? I'll begin on my right this time. Commissioner Perez.
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Aguinaga.
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Limon. Thank you. Commissioner Vasquez. Thank you. Commissioner Ursula.
This is for the RFP, right?
Yes.
I do have questions.
Okay.
Questions and comments for discussion for all of us. I'm very excited to see another opportunity and just that there's continues to be available funds for this. Also that we have that one remaining parcel available, and lots of opportunities for more projects that are affordable to our families. I have a few thoughts, and especially from the previous conversation we had with Jamboree, what can we do at the onset of our RFP projects to make sure that some of the things that they are going above and beyond on are actually part of the process that developers are, required to do or expected to do? And my comments are on the community outreach portion, because there's so many benefits to having people participate from the onset in the design, in naming, their needs and how these projects could come and support the surrounding neighborhoods, really integrate themselves into the surrounding neighborhoods, and add value not only in property values of the neighborhood, but also in meeting the direct needs. So I'm wondering if there's a few places where we might be able to make some amendments to our RFP. And so I see there's the kind of the submittal requirements that starts with statement of qualifications. And this is page 412.
Thank you.
412, 413. Mm-hmm. So it begins with statements of qualifications must include the following components. It talks about the developer team, the developer experience, their financial capacity, and their reference. Today we asked of related what is their experience doing community outreach. And I'm wondering if that's something additional we can ask of developers so that they're aware and thinking about how they integrate community outreach into their work. And so it might read something similar to the narrative, to the previous one on developer experience, but maybe saying a narrative describing their capacity to do community outreach and their experience with an emphasis on the last 5 years. Can they include project names Can they include also the resources available on their end? Do they have staff time? Do they have funding available for the notification, for the outreach, for the meetings, for interpretation, right? Like, what is their capacity to do this type of work? So that's one thought for this. The other one might be around.
Commissioner Ursula,
yeah.
can I step in? Really
Yes, of
quickly?
course.
Just a question for staff. If we do have specific amendment recommendations, would you like us to produce language for that as well?
The recommended action is to authorize the agency to issue the request for proposals. In terms of your feedback on the RFP itself, we can definitely hear and receive that feedback. In order to make it official, you would need to make an amendment to the action to incorporate the language and get that approved by the
So that would just need to
commission.
be a part of the final motion
Yes.
to approve the RFP as amended.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out.
Go
So,
ahead,
so just the comments that I mentioned are with that in mind. If folks can maybe take a look at the page and we'll see it together. So that's one that can be introduced as part of the statement of qualifications. The other one I think can go in a few sections later. Page 416 actually has a clause that talks about the participation of low-income residents and businesses. So that was really great to see. I want to commend the staff on that. And perhaps there's ways we can be a little bit more specific or descriptive here. I want to reference that the City of Santana already has a process for early outreach meetings, early outreach community meetings, as part of the city's Sunshine Ordinance that asks for a very specific a meeting in the neighborhood at a particular radius around the project with notification requirements, again at a particular radius. And specifically, it invites the developers to prepare for the meetings, to be prepared to take input, to document that input, and also have in writing how they are you will need to prepare a detailed written report of the meeting as to the comments you have received, as well as the responses to the questions and suggestions you were posed. So I would ask or amend if that is a language we can also put into the participation of low-income residents, that developers are prepared to do an outreach meeting.
Can you recommend specific language? And I'll start taking notes so that we know what amendments we will be.
Sure. The language that we can add on section 5 there. Now describe this as yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're getting started there by asking them to describe the steps that they would do. But I almost want to reference what the city already has in policy, which is they're called early outreach community meetings. And the Planning and Building Agency has a worksheet to prepare developers on how to do them. And it's on our city's website. So it's perhaps adding language that says that developers perform early outreach community meetings in order to inform their proposals for
Can you repeat that,
development.
Developers.
Can I ask a
inform-
question to that?
Yeah, of course. Oh, sorry.
So in an RFP process, it's to start that first initial,
Right.
and I think what would happen is those that then would come before that would be awarded, those are the additional questions that we would ask at that time, because I think what we're doing, we're getting a little bit ahead of the game, and I think the proposal is basically asking for this information, and then what we could do is that what you're asking for is that if you're coming before us, these are additional things that need to be brought forward.
Yeah, I certainly hear that. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Sorry, I just want to, so I think what Commissioner Ursula said from the beginning is thinking about how we want these developers to go above and beyond. So no, we shouldn't just hope that they'll go above and beyond, but we should make that going above and beyond a requirement for them to. Commissioner, so am I following what you?
Yeah, but also I think I would say I hear what you're saying. I'm referencing the Sunshine Ordinance is a policy that the city approved in 2012.
Yes.
And it was specifically around having early outreach because often, like you noticed today, the developers are presenting to the commission. Just like you mentioned, Commissioner, they don't get the opportunity to present back to the community unless they go out, unless they're invited to do so here, and we don't have a way to make sure they do it. And so this actually changes that by getting very early on the input of the community into the proposals. So I'm just concerned that there really isn't a step in the process where that's required, and this is the opportunity to do it.
If I may, Commissioner Ursula, the Sunshine Ordinance is actually on page 26 in terms of the early outreach community meeting requirement, and we provide a link to the ordinance as well on that page.
426.
Judson, can you
4-30.
Okay.
Judson, can you clarify when the Sunshine Ordinance comes into effect? At what point in the development process?
So it comes into effect when the developer submits their project for approval by our planning department. So not at this stage of the RFP process.
So you want to change that?
And that's where I actually am going to disagree, where no, in the RFP process, and as I read through it, it's just kind of that straightforward. This is what we're doing. But at the same time, I agree with you 1,000% that once we get to this next step, and I think we want to include some of this language and make sure as it gets approved in that process, then those questions are asked.
Yeah, so just to think through it, you're saying that the RFP process, like the one we experienced, we had a number of people apply for it. We don't know if any of them went to do outreach meetings because they didn't. That's not even scored on the score list we got back from people. I'm going to finish my thought briefly, but we don't know if they did that yet. So then they arrived to us. At some point, the staff scored them and they gave us the finalists. And then we got the presentation from the few of the finalists, and they were able to tell us if they did or not. But we made a decision on who to award without knowing if they took any input on it yet. So I'm saying that just to follow the kind of the intent of those policies that the city holds for, then we would do a better service in having it happen before the decision of who's awarded is made. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to follow the process, and I guess where I'm stuck a little bit, the RFP is the initial kind of, this is our plan, this is what we're thinking.
It's conceptual.
Yes, it's the conceptual. So I think we're eating the sandwich before we're making the sandwich.
So what I would add is that it's important to include the community in the development of that concept. Because a lot of times these concepts are being produced without involving the community very early on. And that's how we then sometimes see projects that wouldn't benefit the community, wouldn't meet their needs. And that could have been prevented had the community been, I'm a strong believer that the community needs to be a part of every single step, regardless of how big or how small. And I think here is our opportunity to make that a requirement through this RFP. Commissioner Aguinaga.
Thank you. I have an idea. I don't know if this works or not. I agree with Commissioner Ursula, but I'm also agree with Commissioner Perez. If there is any possibility that whenever we read this, that is come to us through our secretary, if the commissioners that have any ideas, like Commissioner Ursula can talk to you, Jason, so the person who present the project, so ask for, like in this situation, you can talk to them and they can, I don't know, talk about it or whatever. When it comes to us, maybe it's already coming with the idea that Commissioner Ursula has. Because at this point in time, we eat in the sandwich before we prepare it, something like Commissioner Perez said. So
I think there's a lot of comments that want to be made, and I also want to be very transparent and say that I also have a lot of amendments that I'm gonna be recommending. So I'm wondering what would be the best process for us right now so that we don't.
I'm just gonna say two
get done
things.
one by one?
I'm glad that you said what you stated, because to me, I think that's two different things. And I think what you're stating is what us as commissioners are saying, we want to change the system. We want to change the process. So when you look at so to me, I was just referencing, what that rule is. That doesn't mean we can't change it. That doesn't mean we as a commission can't say, well, we want to go above and beyond. So I understand where we're kind of coming to that, where we're looking at changing it internally. And I do agree that we want our community input from the beginning. And maybe we are, the pave makers that change that. So I just was referencing the difference, because when I look at legal and law, I'm like, no, that's different. So, but I understand now where these comments are coming from.
Thank you, Commissioner Perez. Commissioner Ursula.
Thank you. So that's helpful, and I'm also thank you for providing alternatives. What are the ways to do it? So if we don't, I'm wondering. Even one point in between is it something that gets added to the scoring so that we know who's doing it, and it's something that's incentivized rather than required at the onset. I'm open to discussing how it appears, but it's with that spirit of being the innovators of a process that doesn't only require commissioners to make that input. How can community make that input?
I'm sorry, a little quick, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner
With all
Aguinaga.
due respect to all of you, we can try to change whatever we want to change, and I think that we prevent this by reading the agenda and like our chair said, talk to Jason. Jason will talk to the people in charge, whoever is presented in front of us, and that's going to be already prepared. Then it's going to be presented to the council, because they are the ones who are going to make the decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Aguinaga. And just so that we're all understanding why these recommendations are being brought forth today, and I'm going to make several as well. But at the last commission meeting, during commissioner comments, I did ask Judson if we had recommendations, when would the appropriate time to make those be? And Judson communicated that would be during the commission meeting. So that is why I'm bringing them forth today. And maybe in the future, there's a way to create a better process. But, and I thank Bianca as well for making this RFP available to us as soon as it was ready. But it is a very long document that I have read very thoroughly. So I also want to make several recommendations. But I don't know if anyone else has recommendations that they would like to make. So I'm wondering what would the best process be to hear these recommendations out so that we're not stuck on one before we hear the rest.
I just want to be careful to the process. And I think where I definitely agree that we want to make some changes, I just think usually in a subcommittee, sitting down and taking a look. But, I think there's a process, and I think, maybe it's a point of clarification, but I do think these are times to talk. So I want to hear your comments. I want to hear, kind of what you have to say as far as regarding some of the changes. The thing is that I also want to respect the process, what an RFP is. And I think we're having a philosophical debate about changing processes, adding rubric. And, when you do that, that's a deep discussion.
Madam Chair, this is the process, right, Judson?
So the RFP before you has been drafted in compliance with our Affordable Housing Fund's policies and procedures that were adopted by City Council on March 20th, 2018.
This is the process.
And but what I do want to note is that the comments and revisions and feedback that we're hearing from the commission, I'm making sure that it's in compliance with those Affordable Housing Fund's policies and procedures. For example, the question on the scoring rubric, that is explicit in those Affordable Housing Funds policies and procedures and could not be modified here without amending those policies and procedures first by the commission and then by City Council.
So I have two questions off that. How hard is this ideal timeline to put this RFP out by July 1st? Can we slow down this process to ensure that all commissioners, well, that would be my first question. Can this process be slowed down? And what would the implications of that be?
Well, it's really a matter of putting us to work and putting these funds to work. We're trying to keep this process on an annual basis, where every year we issue this RFP at the beginning of the fiscal year, and so it would just delay the issuance of that RFP and delay our ability to recommend affordable housing projects in the next fiscal year.
The other thing that we need to be sensitive to is that each of the federal funding sources that we have, like HOME and CDBG, they actually have commitment and expenditure deadlines. And so knowing that the development projects do have a long process from the time that we start the RFP, we do the minimum threshold review, we do the interviews, we bring it to the commission and to council, they get a pre-commitment letter, and then they go out, they get the rest of their funding in place. It's probably a year and a half before we actually close on the financing. And so that's something that we need to be sensitive to as well.
And we'll give you a practical example just today, right? The $963,000 that the commission just approved for the Crossroads at Washington project, we had to confirm with our HUD field office that those project funds aren't going to expire before the developer is actually able to receive them for the project. We were in a lengthy discussion about the expiration of our CDBG program funds in another meeting a couple weeks ago. So it's a constant effort to ensure these funds aren't being lost to our community as well.
Thank you. And I'll just finish on that note with saying that my interest would be in delaying this no more than a month and a half at most, and calling additional meetings if necessary. Because I do recall that this commission has also requested to review the affordable housing policies and procedures and study those and see if there's any amendments that we do want to make, because this commission has changed a lot since those affordable housing policies and procedures were approved. So my interest, and everybody can hear it out and comment what you might think, but would be to slow down this process a month and a half at most, call for additional commission meetings if necessary, to ensure that we can review those affordable housing policies and procedures, and make any amendments if we feel that they are necessary, because a lot of my amendment recommendations are for the scoring rubric. But hearing that I can't make any of those recommendations because they are coming directly from the affordable housing policies and procedures, now no longer allows me to make any of my amendment recommendations. So I want to hear what the commission thinks about that, and staff, if I understood anything correctly, please correct me.
Let me provide some history too on the adoption of the affordable housing funds, policies, and procedures for you and the rest of the commission in regards to your recommendation. What was it? I think it was April 2016. We were directed by City Council to provide a sole source award of $9.6 million to an affordable housing project being proposed by AmCal.
The First Street Apartments.
For the First Street Apartments project. So that project, they had communicated to City Council and requested those funds directly from our City Council outside of an RFP and procurement process after they had failed to submit their proposal in a timely manner under the RFP that was issued by the city the previous summer. And that was the RFP that awarded the funds to the Santa Ana Arts Collective. They submitted their proposal late, they weren't accepted, and therefore they went directly to City Council for a sole source award of $9.6 million. Following that direction from City Council, I think it was in December 2018, where staff brought forward a recommendation for a portion of funds from a developer, a portion of the city funds. Following that, there was further direction and an ad hoc committee was formed. And the ad hoc committee is not subject to the Brown Act and has no community participation at all whatsoever. And the ad hoc committee directed city staff to award the sole source award to MCAL's project of the amount of $8.5 million, as well as $6 million for another project that, again, did not go through a procurement process. And so you had a total of $14.6 million that was awarded by this ad hoc committee through the power of the rightful power of our city council to do so on June 20th, 2017. Now, at that same meeting, city council directed staff to adopt affordable housing funds policies and procedures so that that kind of process that had no competition and procurement whatsoever could be avoided in the future. And therefore, staff held stakeholder meetings and drafted these policies and brought them to the commission for approval, and then to city council at one meeting, and then to city council for final approval to get those policies and procedures adopted in March 20th, 2018. So that history is important. It's important context to understand what led to the adoption of those affordable housing funds, policies, and procedures on behalf of the community.
Thank you. So with that context and knowing that before it went to the city council, it did have to come to this commission, and this commission approved those policies and procedures to move forward. But that commission was very different from what it is today. We have a lot of new commissioners, a lot of commissioners that weren't here to vote on that. So with that said, my interest is still to delay this process to ensure that we can review those as a commission, make any amendments if we feel they are necessary. And those amendments, so if I'm understanding correctly, this scoring rubric is coming directly from those affordable housing policies and procedures.
Yes.
And it cannot be changed for any RFP unless those it has to match what is listed in the affordable housing policies and procedures.
Yes.
Okay. So my interest is to change this rubric. And that is why I am interested in bringing back the affordable housing policies and procedures, and also seeing if there's anything else that might have been missed by the individuals on the commission before.
Is it me?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. I think the difficult part, and I completely agree of retaking a look at the policies and procedures. However, I think there's a way out. And I think the last thing I want to do is delay a process where it's going to take, 15, 16 months. And I think in situations like this, we can add supplemental questions to a process and I think what I'm hearing is there's things on this commission that we want. So we could actually add supplemental questions to it, okay? Now, as far as a rubric and grading it is difficult, but I think in this process of approving this RFP with the supplemental questions that you guys want answered, and then at the same time establishing time for a special meeting that we really start taking a look at, this process. I think the RFP, how many pages, how long is this?
I'm sorry.
How many pages is the RFP right now?
Oh, it's like 30 something, I think.
Yeah.
35.
And what I mean by that, I don't want to rush. I think it's going to take us more than a month and a half. I really love the idea of taking a look at it and going through that process. And I don't want to rush it and say, okay, we're going to be done in a month and a half, where I think if we approve what we have with the supplemental questions that you guys want answered, okay, then let's spend, if it's 5 months, if it's 6 months, so the next time around, we have it right. That's my idea.
If I may,
can I respond
Commissioner
to Commissioner Perez before you?
Yeah, sure.
Is it a direct response?
Yeah, it is more of, you're talking about 14, 16 months as opposed to a development that's going to be here in the city for 60, 80, 90 years. And so I think, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're trying to give, we don't want to repeat and duplicate the process. And so if it does require us all coming together collaboratively, I think we could come up with some good solutions and not make it complicated. So that is just my 2 cents. I'll give it back to you, sir.
And just really quickly, I keep hearing 14, 15 months. I'm not proposing that we delay the RFP for 14 or 15 months. That's just how long it might take to go through a development process once the money has been awarded. So I just wanted to say I'm not proposing we delay this over a year. Go ahead, Judson.
Three points I want to make. Staff are not recommending to delay the issuance of the RFP. We think that the importance of getting these funds out into our community for the development of affordable housing meets the greatest need in our community. The second thing is looking at page 12 of our Affordable Housing Funds Policies and Procedures. It states the following competitive selection criteria constitute the city's general selection criteria and may be modified from time to time to address practical requirements arising from a particular solicitation at the city's direction.
So we can make those amendments.
Yeah, you can. You can, if you want to amend the competitive selection criteria, you can do that for this procurement. I'll leave my third point to see how this discussion goes.
Well, thank you, Judson. Thank you for looking for taking the moment to go back to look at that language. So, with that said, and I think I've been very transparent, but my recommendations will be to amend. Well, I would like to recommend specific amendments to the points, the eligible points, and the categories for which developers would be eligible for points. And with that said, I'm still interested in bringing back the affordable housing policies and procedures, but we can do that there is no urgency to do that today, or to do that at the next meeting. We can do that. We can slow down on that. Go ahead, Commissioner Russo.
I'm wondering if you want to go through the amendments you proposed, and then we can package it up and make a decision.
Yes. Thank you. So.
What page you want?
So the competitive selection criteria is on page 417.
For what?
417. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Charter, for staying this long. So I'll begin. Well, first of all, the total eligible points that can be received is 100. And if you look on the far right, you'll see how many points can be awarded for each of, well, there's categories and then there's specific ways that the points can be earned. So we can start with the first category, which is 1, level of affordability and target population. In that second box, it says projects provide a higher percentage of units for extremely low-income households with deeper affordability. I think that's great, but my interest is in defining what a higher percentage is. So my interest is to define higher percentage by 50% or more. So a project that provides 50% or more of their units for extremely low-income households with deeper affordability. And then Judson, I'm also open to hearing from you what that score could look like, or how it can be, how that language can maybe be produced to ensure that points can also be earned by developers that maybe don't meet that 50% threshold, but that full points are given to those that do.
We could do it on a tiered basis. So we'll state project. We can state project provides at least 50% or more of units for extremely low-income households with deeper affordability, scored on a tiered basis where 8 points for 40% of the units, 6 points for 30% of the units, 4 points, you get the idea.
Okay. I'm okay with that. And then I also had a question around bonus points. Have bonus points been offered on RFPs in the past? I want to say I've seen them, but I might be mistaken.
They have not.
They have not. Okay. Is that something we would be able to offer? Because my interest would be in providing the opportunity for 5 bonus points for developers that are providing 75% or more of their units for families with extremely low income. So that would be at 30 to 40% AMIs. And the lower the AMI, the area median income, the lower the rents, and the more accessible it is for our families with the greatest needs.
So you're proposing 5 bonus points for projects that provide at least 75% of the units for
Yes.
families at 30% AMI.
Yes. And then I would like to add another opportunity for developers to earn points under this category, which would be for providing amenities that respond to the needs of that community as expressed by members of that community. So that would be an opportunity for an additional point, an additional 5 points, making the total number of points that can be earned from category 1 30, unless those 5 bonus points are also earned, then that would be 35.
Wait, I've got 110. You said 5 bonus points for projects that provide at least 75% of the units for families at 30% AMI.
Yeah, and so as we move down the categories, there are some categories that as a whole might make for 15 points to be available. So I do have some recommendations to change some of those from 15 to 10.
Okay.
So in the end, it will be 100 or up to 105
Okay.
when we account for those bonus points.
What was the second 5 bonus points?
So the second, not bonus points, just second opportunity, an additional opportunity to gain 5 points would be for providing amenities that respond to the needs of that community. And I would like in parentheses or in addition that those should be needs that have been expressed by members of that community.
Moving on.
Moving on to category 2, timeliness to build new housing. So for this category, the total number of points that are available is 20. I would like to reduce that to 15. And that would mean changing the number of points available for each of those items. So where it says project is demonstrated site control, I would recommend moving from 7 to 6. For project is zoned appropriately, I would recommend moving from 5 to 4. For project does not have any other site-related issues, I would recommend moving from 5 to 3. And for project aligns with city's housing element strategic plan and our 5-year consolidated plan, I would recommend moving from 3 to 2. So I just did what I could to make sure that it added up to 15. I'm open to any other recommendations from this commission on changing those numbers, as long as it adds up to 15. Moving on to category number 3, property management experience and skills. On that one, I am proposing no changes to the points or the total points that are available, but where it says on the last item there, it says applicant's capacity and ability to quickly lease completed units. I am interested in making it a requirement that they include a draft community outreach plan that has been informed by residents of that community.
That would go under statement of qualifications.
Okay.
Right.
Or can it? So I was thinking of it being here because.
Hold on. So I'm worried about quorum. Commissioner Vasquez, or?
Do you wish me to say?
Yeah, if you can. How many?
But even if he leaves, we still have 4 for quorum.
4 for quorum. Okay. All right. Okay.
So Commissioner Vasquez, you can stay if you'd like, but if you have to go, we will have quorum.
Okay.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. So under statement of qualifications, under where would you be proposing to add that under the statement of qualifications?
That might fit under page 416, number 5, participation of low-income residents and businesses. Do you think that would be an appropriate area to include that?
That could go there. So Commissioner Sura, you were recommending to be more specific about participation of low-income residents to include early outreach ordinance and the meetings, and then including the worksheet that planning and building has for early outreach and engagement, and then your.
So my interest is in seeing what their community outreach plan would look like for the lease-up process.
Okay.
So that my interest is that they include a draft community outreach plan that has been informed by residents of that community. So that might look like them including some of the things that have been mentioned by commissioners here, like providing extra workshops. And those are things that the community members might request, so they would be a part of this plan. And it's all in an effort to ensure that they're meeting with the community prior to coming up with a concept for their development proposals. Go
Is
ahead.
that something that should be better placed within the actual list of documents that we're asking them to provide in the body of the proposal?
Okay.
Is that,
If that makes more
Rather
sense.
than in the selection criteria, because it's a document, it's not something.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah. Under
Can you
page
repeat that?
12,
You want a description, you want it actually written in what
Yes,
they're doing.
that's what exactly.
So that's what we're moving it into the description portion, so that you actually have it written, that what they're doing, how they're planned. So it's actually written in the description.
Yeah. And that's a document that is probably 3 years, that they're not going to need for 3 years. Does that make sense?
Say it again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, but I would like just to see a draft, and that might just mean them saying, we will go to these community centers, we will go to this local church. I just want to make sure that they're thinking about what that would look like in that community.
Can we make it then, because the community outreach plan that we're referring to is about a 50-page document.
Oh, okay, no, I don't need that.
Then can we say provide a description of your community outreach plan?
Commissioner, so I'm okay with that. Commissioner.
Yes. That's usually something that staff does internally in our timeline as we're working with the projects for the development.
Right. So just that, wanted to clarify that I think the part about not that I'm stating is not so much an outreach plan. Perhaps that's the point you're making, Chairwoman
Yes,
Ramos.
I'm sorry.
But
I didn't know that an outreach plan was a 50-page document.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm requesting.
And I'm referring to just a description of their qualifications that describe their experience and their resources that they're making available for outreach, just to differentiate.
And we got that under page
And that
9.
one's there. Yeah, perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Narrative describing capacity to do community outreach, including the resources.
I think the issue that you're both making, though, is that it's in the document, and what I hear you asking is to put it in the rubric, so then it's scored. So I just want to clarify, that's what you argued earlier.
I do think it should be in the rubric. I'm actually.
So my interest is that it's in the rubric, and I'm trying to figure out how do we do that?
I hear you, like, for example, earlier when you were removing a few points from somewhere, I was looking at it in a similar way. Can we create a category that talks about community input?
And that's actually, that is one of my, so the reason why I am freeing up points is to then create another category. That would be community inclusion.
So number 8 could be community inclusion.
Thank you.
So yes, that would be. So I'll move fast to get there. So moving on to the next category, number 4, developer experience and skills. There is a maximum of 15 points available here. I want to reduce that to 10. And I plan to do that by making applicants' capacity and ability to obtain additional funding a 3. And I would like to add verbiage there to include city funds so that we can then remove category number 5 to free up another 5 points. And then staff, I'm open to hearing why that is its own separate category, and if you feel that there's a need for it.
Okay, so you want to bring up the leveraging of city funds?
So in category number 4, that first item says applicant's capacity and ability to obtain additional funding. So I would like to add to that, including city funds, so that is still reflected in the rubric, but doesn't take up a whole 5 points.
So you want to remove section 5
Remove
for 5
section 5
points
completely.
and reduce category 4
to 10.
applicants.
Oh, sorry. So
Applicants, okay, but the first line is, you're just including it in there, so you're eliminating 5
Yes, and still reflecting the city funds by adding that.
Okay,
to
but
item.
category 4, what's the subtotal on that?
So, I haven't named those yet, thank you. So,
it's-
for.
I just,
the
before you
subtotal
do
would be
that,
10.
I,
Go ahead.
I want to be careful in the process because I think it's two processes. One, developer experience and skills. I'm going to fight. That has to be at a high level, and we have to account for them at a high level. So I think I'm agreeing with the other processes I'm flowing. I just think that one is not where I want to take points away from.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm open to hearing any.
Yeah, so I'm okay with everything right now.
And thinking creatively, then, if we want to leave those 5 points there.
I like the bonus points. So I like the bonus points, and I think, you know, maybe we reduce it to 3 and 2, so there's an extra 5, because 5 points is huge. So I want to be careful that we don't, you know, move.
And I think the other thing we need to remember with affordable housing projects, they are all going to have a financing gap. And so the viability of the project really depends on their ability to obtain additional financing. They can do all of the outreach in the world ahead of time and bring you a great plan and get community input. But in the end, if they can't get the project off the ground because they can't obtain additional financing, it's all just wasted effort. So that's something that I think we need to be careful about.
So does staff also feel strongly about category 4 staying as is? I'm very open and happy to hear everybody's recommendations and suggestions, including staff's.
So I saw when we initially drafted this document, the duplication of 5 and 4A, we'll say, right? It's essentially asking the same exact thing. So we'd be fine, Janice.
Eliminating 5?
In terms of eliminating 5.
Well, then kind of number 5 then will be the community engagement piece.
Yeah, well, yeah. It could
So
be
instead of
whatever
8,
number,
yeah.
depending on.
Chair.
But, so my interest in reducing points is to then make that community inclusion part worth 15 points.
15?
Yes. So
As
I
much
still
as
need to,
timeliness?
I'm still not done showing where I would get those numbers from. But do you feel very strongly about category 4 staying at 15?
Yes.
Okay, so that's something I'm okay with. Now, I just,
For clarification.
go ahead,
I wanna-
Vice Chair Santana.
I didn't realize there's a chalkboard behind us, but, you know, I'm gonna write something down because it
Nice.
feels like it's going back and forth.
Are you volunteering to be our scribe, Vice Chair Santana?
We have a clerk, council, so I don't know, or is this all clicking?
I've got.
Yeah, I think we're
Yeah,
clicking. I think there's a lot of agreements. I think we're flowing.
I'm going too fast.
Yeah,
to
no,
slow it
I'm
down.
agreeing. I've agreed to everything.
Chairwoman, can I
Go ahead,
jump?
Commissioner-
Then just that, keeping in mind that the first category grew by 5 points, so we can leave it at 25. That way the other one can stay at
Yes.
15, and we can still get 15 points for.
So I would recommend then that amenities become also bonus points.
Sorry,
So
wait a
moving,
second.
if we go back to category number 1,
can we, we're still, so let's stay with,
Category
so
4.
developer experience and skills, right now I've got, that scoring remains exactly the same.
Correct.
Yes. So we will recommend that remains at 15 points.
And the only difference is on the 5A, we incorporate that with 4A.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and so it's now 5A is being replaced. 5 would be replaced
5 is
completely.
being
5 is being, yes, taken.
5 as is
and
is being
replaced.
removed.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, category 4 will stay as is. And we can go back to category number 1, which as is 25 points, and I brought it to 30. I'm okay with bringing that back down to 25. And let's say I added 1D, which was amenities. So providing 5 points for projects that provide amenities that will meet the community's needs. And I had asked that be 5 points. I will now ask that be bonus points. So.
I already had that as bonus points.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
So-
that's 25 then, and you're,
Yeah, it's still,
Okay, great.
still 25. On the level of affordability stayed. We only changed that a project provides at least 50% or more of the units for ELI, scored on a tiered basis, and then the bonus points would go at the end.
yeah, so those would be 2 bonus points categories.
Yeah.
One for 75% or more, and one for amenities.
Yes.
Perfect, thank
Yep.
you very much.
Yep.
So now so category number 5 as is completely gone. Category number 6, I had also thought about bringing down from 15 points down to 10. And there's 5 items there, so I was gonna say they can all move down from 3 to 2. But if staff or any commissioner has very strong feelings about that remaining at 15, I'm happy to hear them.
I just want us to remember that what we're talking about is funding a construction project.
Right.
And so we still need to make sure that we're looking at this and evaluating from the perspective of a construction project. And granted, it's for the purpose of affordable housing, and so we still need to make sure it's meeting the needs of the community. But I am concerned about reducing the category to timeliness to build new housing, 20 to 15 points, as well as the anticipated cash flows, because that's going to be what drives the actual viability of the project.
Yeah, I would say to keep it if we can.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm okay with that remaining at 15. My question now would be for category number 7. Is there a way to move that or somehow include that in category number 1 so that we can eliminate that category for project location?
But wouldn't that be important?
Yeah, so that's it. So it's kind of, it wouldn't go with number 1, because that's in terms of the unit mix and level of affordability and target population. Wouldn't go with number 2.
Is there a big
Actually, it could go with number 2. It could be timeliness. No, it couldn't really go with number 2.
I think
well,
it
actually,
can stand on its own, though.
I do too.
Okay, so
Yeah.
is there a big deal if it's out of 105 instead of 100 without the bonus points?
So is that what that's what it
So
adds
I
up
was
to when
trying
you
to
do
get
that?
to 100, not including the bonus points. But if there's no big deal, I'm perfectly fine with that staying there. I also think it is very important.
I'm seeing it at 95 right now. 95 and then 105 with if you add in the bonus points.
So, and then the community inclusion category that I would like to add would be 15 points.
Okay.
That would be
And so you
that
would
would
bring
be a
it to
category 8 or new category 7 since our numbers have changed because we removed category number 5.
Okay, so we're proposing to replace category number 5, right? The leveraging of
Yes,
city
with
funds?
community inclusion. A category titled community inclusion.
Okay.
So the total would now be at 115 with the bonus points.
And you said 15. And you said 15 points on the community inclusion?
Yes.
And what would be the performance measure, the criteria measure?
So that's where I would like to hear from my fellow commissioners.
I'm struggling with that amount.
Yeah.
It's significant, yes. I mean, you're talking 15. The developer's experience is 15. I think it's valuable, and I think it's critical. I would leave it somewhere between 5 and 8, which is still significant, And we're getting the bonus points for all those other areas. So I like it. I just think 15 is I can maybe go half on that,
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that coming down to 10, and then we're at 100 without including the bonus points.
So can we go through the total points for each
Yes.
of the categories? Because I have different
Yes, we
numbers.
can.
So we've got,
So category 1, the subtotal for category 1 would be 25.
stay the same.
Stays the same. Subtotal for category number 2 would be 15, so decreased by 5. Subtotal for category number 3 would stay the same. Subtotal for category number 4 would stay the same. Number 5 is no longer there. Number 6 stays the same. Number 7 stays the same. And I would like to replace what was once category number 5 with a new category that would be titled community inclusion. And I was recommending that be 15 points, but I'm okay with that coming down to 10.
And 10 would get us to 100 points.
Yeah, and then there's 10 bonus points.
It gets you to 105.
Well, I think so.
had
So
a-
if we look at that, so timeliness is currently 20, so it brings us down to 15.
No, the timeliness, she reduced to 15, right? So
Yes,
that's
so in
subtract 5, but she's adding.
In category
10.
1,
And we're subtracting 5 from 5.
So we're
category
over,
5.
right? We're at 105?
No, we're at 100 because we subtracted 5 from category 5, because that one went away.
Oh,
That's where we
Yeah,
got the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yep.
And there's 2 opportunities for 10 additional bonus points in category number 1. So if an applicant was completely perfect and got every possible point, they would reach a score of 110.
Yes, yes.
Um,
So you're proposing 10 points for community.
For
inclusion.
10 points for community inclusion, that leaves us at 100. Commissioner Perez, or
And those can be.
I think she wanted to, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I jumped in, but I feel like you don't look this way.
I'm sorry.
But just to start drafting what those could be, some of the things that we heard today is like outreach to local stakeholders, neighborhood associations, or neighborhood groups in the area. If there's an early outreach meeting, that could be one. I'm curious as to the actual 50-page plan. I don't know too much about that, but if there's some elements that could be anticipated here.
That was provided as in one of the requests for information follow-up on the marketing for, I think it was First Street. So that's actually something
Okay.
that you have that was emailed to you.
And it's just one case, or is this applicable to all?
All projects have to put together a marketing plan. And
Oh,
that's
it's in their
something
marketing plan.
that we review, and Judson and I have conference calls and meetings with them to review their
Perfect.
marketing plan, how they're going to implement the local Santa Ana preference. There's a lot of discussion around that.
Great, that makes sense.
Things are standardized. The property management companies across the country have to be in compliance with federal law and local and state law for this. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so those are some that I can think of. If there's other things that stood out today that we, as good examples that we can bring into this.
So I mean, that's the first one I can think of. Hold meetings with local community stakeholders, so residents that live in that neighborhood. And then I don't know if there's any other ideas on that.
There's, yeah.
So.
Can I say that
Go
there's
ahead,
also
Commissioner
an
Sampson.
issue with the school district, because sometimes,
Yep.
so maybe working with the school district. 'Cause
So I think, thank you.
They've come out a couple times and when it comes to projects.
That they weren't aware of. So I know in category 1, one of the scores is tiered. So maybe we can do that for this as well. So if they meet with local community, with residents, they receive 5 points. And then if they meet with any other local businesses or even the local schools, that would be another 5 points. So that'd be an easy way to divide up the 10. How do you all feel about that?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're tracking the categories and,
So that would be 2 categories under community inclusion, each valued at 5 points.
okay, because I mentioned engagement with the local groups, neighborhood associations.
So that could be the first
That's
category.
one. Early outreach meetings could be a second one. And I don't know, would this school one be part of the
Maybe the school should be its own
engagement?
category. Any schools in the neighborhood or the school district. What do you
I
think?
would, so as you're adding things here, I'm writing it down, but staff would advise you have to keep into consideration, if you look at the RFP that was just issued, you had 7 developers, including your development team, apply under that process. And you had no idea that you were even going to get funding, and no idea whether or not you were going to be recommended for funding. So as you add to this laundry list saying all this outreach and engagement, you get 7 different developers out there approaching neighborhoods. It doesn't make sense administratively.
Yeah.
I mean, if you propose, letters of support from the local
that's true.
neighborhood, efforts to demonstration of efforts to meet with the local school district, of efforts that they can undertake.
Yeah.
That would make sense within their
Yes.
existing capacity.
Thank you, and I thank you, Judson, for bringing that up, and I welcome any comments and feedback that you all may have, because you all actually see these applications and see what they look like and hear from the developers as well.
So I think the other thing to remember is when we get these proposals, they're conceptual. And so, and from the time that they actually are built, from the time that we get the proposal to they actually get their financing in place and they start construction, there's actually a lot of like little tweaks and changes that they make. So if you think about the Francis Xavier project, they started with 12 units, and now they're looking at 17 units because the parcel next to them became available. And same thing with this related proposal. Their original proposal had a different unit mix and different affordability levels, and just going through the RFP process and meeting with the county expressed what their concerns were and what their priorities were. So they were responsive, and they created half of the units as PSH. And then when they came back and met with us, showed us what they had changed for the county to be responsive, we went back and made a really bold move and said, we want all of your Santa Ana, the larger units, we want the rest of them 3 and 4 bedrooms, and we want them all 30%. Right. And that meant, and they went back and they did it. And so, well, but that's what I'm saying is like, the initial proposal you get is not set in stone. Right. It's a negotiation. And so that's where if staff knows what your preferences and the needs of the community, and you make that known to us, we can go back and negotiate. And then when they come here by your questions, you make it known that you think that, community outreach is very important, and you're asking for them, you need to get back to us and give us your plan. So there's still, you've still got a good 15 months in there to actually, tweak and change the project a little bit and can mold it the way you want to see it. So I just want you to remember that as we're tweaking this, because like Judson says, if we put too many constraints on the developers up front, it could be a burden on the neighborhood as well as on the developers when they don't even have a project approved yet. And that's the danger.
Yeah, thank you for that input. So for this community inclusion category, I'm open to maybe listing several things that they could do, but they're not required to do all of them. I would just like to see that intent to at least start engaging with that community. So that could be by holding a meeting. That could be by them presenting letters of support, and I'm open to hearing, or by attending like a PTA meeting. Just having at least show, like them demonstrating that intent, but providing a list of examples for how they could do it, so that not all 8 developers are trying to have a meeting, but maybe 2 of them will try to have a meeting, 3 others might visit a nearby school, and 2 might request letters of support.
So another thought, if we look at Related as an example, they have not had all of the community meetings and outreach yet, but they've actually made a commitment to donate a portion of their developer fee and to basically give back to the community. And so that's still something that takes a lot of meetings and time and thought with city staff as well as residents to figure out what that looks like. But that's something that maybe if you do it a little bit more broadly in the proposal to say, if you're willing to make a community improvement in the neighborhood and just leave it broad through your developer fee, that might be another way to go. And so then it's up to them to look and kind of do some studying, and they need to, basically what you're saying is we want you to know the neighborhood and to have thought about the neighborhood that you're going to be building in and how you're going to fit into them and enhance the needs of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sua.
That's great, and it makes me think about perhaps one other option is also looking into some of the data. I don't know how to write it, but just like demonstrated understanding of the data and the needs.
Well, that's actually
that's
in
in
here.
the program, yeah.
Yeah, they actually have to respond and tell what need they're responding to in which of the city plans and documents, whether it's the housing element or the con plan.
So then we can give points to that since they're responding to it, and they could accrue some points there.
So what I would like to ask from you on now is to just help me figure out how to divide up these 10 points.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with 10 for community because I think this is the issue. I think what we want and what I'm hearing from our fellow commissioners is that we want to see how is it you're going to engage. Because if we start having 7 developers go out, you know, we saw this with the empowerment zone, we saw this with the healthy building communities. I mean, how many meetings were we at? We kept saying like, oh, you're another meeting, you're another meeting. And it put a strain on the community. It put a strain on people like, you know, but I think what we're asking is, can you give us some examples? Can you give us, some information on how you would do this? But at the same time, I think what I'm hearing is, how do you truly know the community? How do we know that you know that community? And I think we have to be careful, and I think that's where city staff's responsibilities and roles and their expertise lies in it. And I think it's really on the back end to give them a higher score. I think acknowledging at a 5 points, I like the bonus points. And the reason I like the bonus points is because it makes them go above and beyond to show it. And we're going to give you credit for it. So I think, 5 points as far as community engagement, give us a plan of how you're going to engage the community. What are some strategies and techniques? So then they can, listen, if they go above and beyond and hold a meeting, that's great. We like that. But I just want to be a little bit careful that, we weigh 10% is significantly a high percentage amount.
So might I be able to make a motion recommendation?
So, okay, I'm sorry. So right now we're just hearing all of the recommendations before anybody puts a motion on the floor. So hearing your concerns, and I can see how they are valid. You don't feel comfortable with going up to 10 points, but you would feel comfortable with going up to 8, as you had previously stated.
And we could add the other 2 points, in my opinion, to either the experience,
timeliness,
or the timeliness.
Yeah,
I actually was going to go with
time.
timeliness.
Yeah.
I would actually add 2 points there, and then go with the 8 points for community.
Commissioner or Chairwoman?
Yes, Commissioner Ursula.
Great. So yeah, I think we're getting somewhere. I was going to ask if we gave a number of things. Does staff feel comfortable with that? 8 points then for community inclusion. Would you feel comfortable with naming those subcategories and their points?
Yeah. So what I currently have drafted is now eight points, and I've got right now I've got it drafted as, for example, outreach to local stakeholders, early outreach meetings with local stakeholders, demonstration of effort to work with local school district, engagement with local neighborhood associations, or letters of support from local community groups. And it's kind of, when I say, for example, it's any of the below.
That sounds great. And I would like to offer another bonus point opportunity for those that, and I don't know what this might look like, but show or have an intent to donate a percentage of that developer fee back to the community. So to do a community investment through that developer fee. I think that is worthy of bonus points. But I'm trying to think how through this RFP process, with them like saying that they have that intent, how can they be held accountable to actually fulfill that?
So let me wrap up one thing though.
Go ahead.
Before I return to that. So the 8 points, everybody's agreeing on community inclusion.
Yes.
Okay, and then adding back 2 points to
To
timeliness.
category number
Yes.
2. So I would say
Project aligned with city housing elements, strategic plan, 5
that
year.
can go up to
5? It's 3 right now.
no. Right now it's at 2. because
Oh,
we
2, then
brought
we'll
that
go
down
4.
to 15. So we go to 4. Okay.
So back to 3.
No, 2 to 4, because we
So
get 2.
Okay, 2 to 4.
2D would go from what was 3 and then became 2 would now become 4.
Okay, all right. Okay, so now we're whole on the 100
We're at
points.
100 again.
In regards to adding a third category of bonus points, what I would advise the commission is that as one of the largest recipients of entitlement funds by the federal government through our CDBG program and home program, as well as the use of our inclusionary housing funds, when our city issues an RFP, we get quite a bit of attention, and we attract quite a lot of developers to our development opportunities to provide for our residents. And when you add a third category of business points, conceptually, it begins to look unique.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so I would propose I would propose to revise one of the 2 bonus point categories before you add a 3rd category.
Okay, so I'm open to hearing where you all think we can include this intent for the developer to donate a percentage of their developer fee, because I think that's very important. I'm very happy that Related is doing that. I think they're leading by example, and now my interest is that other developers follow suit.
I have a thought on that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Ursula.
Can it go under the 8 points for community inclusion?
So maybe if those 8 points are, if there's subcategories, I think so far we've listed a few. So if it's 8 points available there, my interest would be that 8 of those points, that 3 of those 8 points can be earned if the developer has an intent to donate a percentage of their developer fee.
That's a big incentive.
I mean, 3 of 8, are you all in agreement with that? Okay, great. So those are all of my recommendations for the scoring rubric. I have 2 others that are outside of the scoring rubric. The first one is off page 4.8, which is actually the introduction. So if we look at that second paragraph, it says available funds for this RFP, and below that there are numbered smaller paragraphs. That first line of the one that is numbered as 1 says the purchase of, so ways in which the funds can be used. The purchase of existing multifamily or other buildings for rent or sale to low and very low income households. My interest would be that we change that from low and very low to very low and extremely low income households. And staff, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well.
I'm okay with that because the intent and purpose of that original text, so you're trying, what you're trying to revise here is text that is explicit in the Affordable Housing Funds policies and procedures.
And that aligns with our housing element.
The spirit of the text was very low and extremely low. So I see that as a non-substantive change that we can make here. So yeah, we can make that revision.
Great, thank you.
So page 4, your
page 4.8. Just
so bullet 1. Yeah.
So going to very low and extremely low.
So for sale, okay, to very low and extremely low. Okay.
And can you remind us of what those AMI levels would be?
50% and 30% AMI.
Perfect, thank you. And then my only other recommendation is we hear about it on page 4.4. There's a review panel. So the review panel that will be reviewing these proposals that are received. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but as of now, that review panel is of 5 individuals, all city staff. And they are, so on page 4.4, that's the executive director of the city's public works agency, or his designee, the executive director of the planning and building agency, or his designee, executive director of the community development agency, the housing division manager, and the housing programs analyst. So that is 5, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So my interest would be in adding 2 additional individuals to this review panel. And I have two ideas, either making both of them low-income Santa Ana residents, or my second option would be 1 low-income Santa Ana resident and 1 commissioner.
So 2 things on that. One is that is a substantive change to the Affordable Housing Funds policies and procedures.
Okay, so that's one that can't be made today.
But the second thing is that the commission has to approve any project that's recommended from this RFP process, and you already have 2 tenant commissioners on this commission who do represent extremely low-income families as well.
So thank you for that clarification. That's something I would like to explore with the commission when we review those policies and procedures. But that is all for my recommendations to this RFP. Are there any others that anybody would like to make?
No.
Just kidding. No, we're at 100 and 10 bonus points. Okay. With that said, is there a motion to, let's see, do we have a motion to approve item 4, authorize issuance of fiscal year 2019 through 2020 requests for proposals for affordable housing development as amended by this commission?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Ursula. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Vice Chair Santana. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 The matter is approved by unanimous consent with a vote of 4-0. Now moving on to public comments. Does the public have any comments that they wish to share with the commission? Please know that you have 3 minutes to speak. Seeing as there are none, we will now move on to staff member comments. Does staff have any comments they wish to share with the commission?
Yes. Sorry. Just trying to note down who's absent. So that was it was 4-0 with
4-0 with commissioners Aguinaga, Frazier, Vasquez, and Garcia absent.
Okay. And then it was, the last vote was 9-0 then with Garcia absent. I forgot. Yes.
8 with our student commission.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, yes, so staff just have three comments. First, congratulations to the Commission on the award of affordable housing funds that you approved today. That was quite a very large item, as well as your approval of the RFP, the issuance of the RFP with the amendments that were adopted. We want to bring your attention to the Housing Authority Story of Success that was published for May on Miss Joy Torres. She has a very inspirational story of going through, drug rehabilitation and mental health services and, homelessness, sleeping in her car, and then learning to cherish herself and become independent. Using our Section 8 housing assistance, and now using our assistance as a platform to improve her life through our Housing Plus program. We have an upcoming graduation ceremony on June 6th for our Housing Plus program at 4 p.m. at our work center. Please let us know if you can attend. Please let me know directly, even though the RSVP would go directly to Brenda. Let me know as well so I can ensure you're added to the agenda to speak. If you're interested, and they're really heartwarming events, and our graduates sometimes speak and share some of their personal testimony, and they're relatively small as well, but our efforts is to do as much as possible to encourage and motivate our families to join this voluntary program. And receive free assistance from our workforce specialists to improve their lives. 2 other updates are in terms of hiring and recruitments. Our residential construction specialist position, there were panel interviews that were held yesterday for 10 candidates. We expect to receive the results of those panel interviews from our Human Resources Department later this week. And then we will be scheduling the second and final interviews in the next two to 3 weeks. And lastly, our Housing Specialist 2 recruitment, following a retirement by one of our housing specialists, a conditional offer of employment was accepted. And so following the criminal background and health screening process, we look forward to having a start date for that candidate. With that, we have no further comments.
Thank you. I'll begin with our student commissioner, Commissioner Limon, for commission member comments.
I have no comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Ursula.
Yes, want to say gratitude to our commissioners for doing this today. I feel like it's an opportunity to make a contribution, to make a difference. I want to thank our staff for I mean, just the things you've already anticipated, the work you did with Related, they brought forward a very good proposal, and I know that was in large part because of the way that you're anticipating and bringing forward the needs of this community. So I feel very, very, fortunate that you're doing that, from the inside. And also, I think that this is a good team effort because in some ways we're also setting kind of processes and policies, or not policies, but processes in place that will remain regardless of whether we're on this commission, whoever's on staff. So I think it's great. It's a great thing that we're engaging in, and just activating our position and our service, on this commission. So I sincerely am grateful for all of your words of warning and everything today, and I thank you for your trust.
Thank you, Commissioner Ursula. Commissioner Perez.
Again, I just want to thank staff for all your support and hard work, and just glad to be part of the team. Got to work side by side, and commissioners, I love this process, and I love us, making sure that we're supporting our communities, supporting our residents, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Santana.
Thank you. Chair, I echo Ursula and Perez's comments. I think this is something that we'll be happy seeing, 3 years down the line. I would like to reach out to the staff and say if you can help us coordinate a tour of the link. I understand that, it's a busy time of the year, but we would love to take a tour, especially now that, the weather is changing, and I personally myself would like to see not just a drop-in, I want the full experience, and as well as a ride along with the COLT team as they respond to calls. This is the third request, but I know coordinating has always been an issue, and groups of 3. So if you can please help work with us to build in time and dates, that'd be great. And then last question is, no, we'll leave it at that. We're good.
And Matthew, yes.
I have sent several emails to everyone to let me know what days and times you are available, so we can coordinate the link.
You have, yeah. No, you have, and I think when I reached out to Hassa, I think I might have skipped, CC'd you into the communication, but I asked her, because she wanted to do just 3, and it was during the day, and I get it, but let's resend out. Is there a Survey Monkey or something? What's the other one they use? Doodle? Would a Doodle work?
And we also have to leave it 2-3 so that we're not violating the Brown Act, correct?
It's the third time this item has come up, and we've been trying to schedule this tour. So what I suggest is I'm going to ask Hafsa to reach out individually. So Commissioner Santana, you're interested. Commissioner Ramos?
I have interest, but my schedule's all over the place, so I don't want to hold back any group that can go before.
I'm extremely interested in the whole experience.
So I'm going to have Hafsa reach out to you individually, and if it's necessary to do individual tours, then she'll do that.
Perfect.
So that we can close out the item for you guys.
Thank you.
Coordination is no longer necessary.
Thank you. Just want to echo a lot of what has been said. Thank you, staff. Thank you so much for staying here with us into the late night, for thinking creatively with us as we wanted to make a lot of these changes. And I really think that we are uplifting the needs of the community and that we're providing real potential solutions to meet some of these needs. So thank you very much. And then just 2 requests for staff. One of them I thought during Related's presentation. So Related talked a little bit about their financing, but I don't know that we all as commissioners are aware of what those terms mean and what that financing process is really like. So I'd like to request that we have a work study session to understand what affordable housing financing looks like, especially as we're releasing an RFP and we're going to see proposals again so that we can better understand. Go ahead.
And we had actually already scheduled that for your next commission meeting on June 26th, is it?
Awesome.
And we thought through as well bringing this item prior to that that training, and it should have been flip-flopped, but it was the availability of KMA to do that training. So unfortunately, it wasn't before the item was heard today.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing that request. And then the only other one would be to bring back the affordable housing policies and procedures at a future meeting. And I understand if it can't be the next meeting because we will have that work study session, so then maybe the July meeting. And Commissioner, and that's it, but thank you so much, staff. I know that I request a lot, and Judson, I will also do my best to let you know in advance of changes that I plan to make to some of these recommendations that will be brought forth. So, well, thank you all. With that said, this meeting is adjourned at 7:39.